When a Jinchuriki deliberately falls into a deep sleep to let their tailed beast fully awaken, there's a major drawback compared to a true full-tailed beast transformation, Orochimaru said as he scanned the three tails' massive form, searching for the Jinchuriki's position. The Jinchuriki's body can't merge with the tailed beast. It stays exposed on the beast's surface. If the Jinchuriki is killed or awakened, the tailed beast will vanish from their body. He found the telltale corner of cloth fluttering behind a thick, sharp spike at the end of the three tails' head. Mu Yue activated his Byakugan and confirmed the location. "Do we kill him or try to wake him and capture him alive?" Mu Yue asked. Orochimaru's eyes never left the beast. "Kill him if you can," he answered quickly. Capturing a living Jinchuriki was almost as difficult as killing one. Both required an attack, and taking a Jinchuriki alive creates long-term political and military consequences. A living Jinchuriki is a walking bomb. Even advanced sealing techniques can't completely stop a Jinchuriki who willingly gives the tailed beast control. Worse, seizing a tailed beast outright would make a permanent enemy of the mist and unite other villages against Konoha. Killing the Jinchuriki would still inflame the mist, but not nearly as badly as stealing their tailed beast. The three tails roared, gathering huge amounts of chakra into its mouth. Small black motes swirled and merged into a dark orb. Thanks to Orochimaru's warning, the Jonin had already withdrawn to safety. Only Mu Yue's disciples and Orochimaru remained near him. Orochimaru trusted Mu Yue's skill with the Flying Thunder God technique and didn't pull back like the others. As the three tails spat the massive black orb, Mu Yue launched a Flying Thunder God kunai at its flank and immediately activated his Flying Thunder God to teleport off the battlefield. The orb detonated. The explosion smashed the camp. Tents were reduced to ash, the ground collapsed, and a mushroom of smoke and dust billowed skyward. When the smoke cleared, the three tails looked over the ruined field and, satisfied, assumed the irritating ninjas were gone. Then Mu Yue reappeared at its side, Orochimaru and the others with him. Wind release, wind cutter technique. Orochimaru formed seals and thrust his palm at the beast. Raking gales and dozens of wind blades struck the three tails. Even at close range, the attack drove the massive creature back and left gouges on its shell. Mu Yue fired another Flying Thunder God kunai at the beast's head. The three tails ignored the others and lashed its three tails toward Orochimaru. Metkai pushed his breathing to the limit, entering rock-breathing chakra mode while in the fifth gate. Draining his chakra rapidly, he turned his body into a terrifying instrument of strength. With the hidden mist ninjas withdrawn, he no longer had to hold back. To assist Mu Yue, he tolerated the bodily damage that came with combining the fifth gate and rock-breathing mode. Leaf-strong whirlwind, Guy launched himself, concentrating chakra in his legs, and delivering a whirlwind kick that sent one of the giant tails flying and smashed it into the ground. Orochimaru watched with interest. He had seen many Taijutsu-reliant shinobi, and most supplemented their fighting with ninjutsu. Pure Taijutsu specialists of the highest caliber were rare, but Metkai's raw physical skill impressed him. He calmly formed seals and used earth release to raise a thick wall, blocking two of the three tails' tails. Though Orochimaru favored snake techniques, he'd mastered many elemental jutsu and always used what worked. Shisui and Obito entered flame-breathing chakra mode and released fire release together to draw the beast's attention. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. They inhaled and exhaled great sheets of flame, wrapping the three tails' limbs. The flames were more nuisance than lethal. The beast was armored and preferred water, but heat irritated it. As a kunai screamed toward the three tails' head, Mu Yue blinked onto the beast's crown with Flying Thunder God. The three tails shook its head violently, trying to fling him off. Mu Yue planted chakra in his feet and ran calmly across the creature's head toward the Jinchuriki. "Don't think you can easily get sealed back in," the three tails prepared, gathering chakra and lowering its head to drag Mu Yue into another tailed beast ball. For a creature that liked the sea, taking such an attack was only a sting. A small shinobi would be obliterated if caught in the blast. Orochimaru, Kakashi, and the others fell back fast. With Mu Yue's teleportation, they concentrated on avoiding the blast themselves. The three tails unleashed another colossal explosion. Smoke and dust washed over its bulk. When it cleared, Mu Yue's body stood at a distance, having used pre-placed flying thunder god marks to escape the blast. The three tails retracted its head into its shell, appearing almost like a shrinking turtle. From a distance, it looked less like the thunderous beast everyone feared and more like a huge, heavily armored turtle. "And a very hard turtle," Kakashi muttered. Their ninjutsu had done barely any damage. The jonin who dodged the last tailed beast ball rushed back in. "Concentrate on the legs that haven't retracted," Orochimaru ordered. With its whole body in a hard shell and its head tucked away, the beast now had double protection. The team focused their attacks on the exposed limbs. Orochimaru used body flicker to appear beside the three tails again, and slammed the same wind cutter assault into the spot he'd hit before. He poured his wind nature to the limit into the technique. Wind blades converged on one point. The hard shell cracked. The wind blades cut deep. The three tails, which had been lashing at Konoha Shinobi, cried out and paused. Enraged, the creature thrust its head out and began to condense a tailed beast ball. This time it wasn't the reduced, quick version. The beast was building a full, devastating blast. The jonin stopped their attacks and vanished with body flicker. None of them wanted to be near that explosion. Just then Mu Yue appeared on the three tails' head again, Enma in hand. He had put a flying thunder god mark there earlier and had been waiting. The beast sensed the disturbance and, acting on instinct, retracted into its shell at incredible speed. It moved so fast it left afterimages. That retraction made it nearly impossible to reach the Jinchuriki hidden at the back of its head. "You weren't this timid when you were attacking us," one jonin grumbled. Others noted the three tails' caution and marveled at its speed. "The Jinchuriki really is the ultimate weapon. I wonder how powerful our nine tails Jinchuriki is," another whispered. Obito watched Mu Yue with admiration. He had scoffed when villagers praised Kakashi, but hearing the crowd acknowledge Mu Yue's strength made Obito grin. Mu Yue, barely 20, impressed him as someone destined for fame. Kakashi, relieved, thought the fight was effectively over. Mu Yue's timing and teleportation made the three tails' defeat inevitable. Mu Yue, already in rock-breathing chakra mode, poured chakra into lightning nature and infused Enma. Purple lightning wrapped the blade, and Mu Yue's movements blurred. "Thoughtless blade!" he cried. As the three tails had almost fully withdrawn, Mu Yue brought the purple-lit blade down. The lightning-laced slash shattered the hard spikes guarding the Jinchuriki's head. 1, 2, 3. They split like kindling. The destructive arc slammed straight toward the sleeping human. The Jinchuriki, perhaps sensing death, opened his eyes at the very last instant. It did nothing else. The slash was faster than reaction. One clean stroke struck the Jinchuriki's head. Without a sound or expression, his body vanished. The relationship between a Jinchuriki and its tailed beast is strange and fatal. If a tailed beast is removed, the Jinchuriki dies. If the Jinchuriki dies while the beast is still bound, the beast dies too. Death, however, is not permanent for tailed beasts. They revive later. But in that moment, the three tails could only roar. "No!" It howled in a last, furious protest, captured in a human body, then killed by a shinobi. Its massive eyes locked on Mu Yue as its form began to dissipate. The great creature's body unraveled into shimmering particles that drifted away into the air. When the three tails vanished, the sudden loss of chakra dimmed the sun. The battlefield was plunged into dusk. "He actually did it!" a Konoha jonin breathed. No one had expected Mu Yue's surprise strike to reach the Jinchuriki through that retraction, but it had. Single, decisive, lethal. Hyuga Hizashi, watching with Byakugan, still felt the force of Mu Yue's blade. The hardened spikes had seemed invulnerable until the purple lightning cut them like paper. Nara Shikaku compared the power to the third Raikage's strongest spear. Kakashi felt a stirring of ambition. Such a blade was worth a decade of pursuit. Metkai, exiting his mode in the gates, gave Mu Yue a thumbs up. As expected of Teacher Mu Yue, he said. Rin exhaled shakily. "Is everyone all right?" "I'm fine, Rin," Obito replied and moved to check on her. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed. "Lord Mu Yue, you're full of surprises." He was openly pleased. Mu Yue's display made him scheming. Even if Mu Yue rejected his experiments, Orochimaru knew he had to find a way to bring such talent to his side. A subordinate like Mu Yue would be invaluable. "He's only 20, Orochimaru mused. there's still so much room for growth. Young as Mu Yue was, his potential already rivaled the greatest. Orochimaru imagined what having Mu Yue on his side could mean, one exceptional ally worth dozens of jonin. Killing a full-tailed beast with your own hands, Lord Mu Yue. Your name and your slashing will spread through the ninja world after this battle. I'll report your merits to the higher-ups, Orochimaru said with a rare smile as he walked up to Mu Yue. He used the smile deliberately, softer, more approachable. It was a trick, and everyone deserves credit, Mu Yue replied after a moment of thought. He wasn't false modesty. The victory was genuinely a group effort. Whether it was Mu Yue and Orochimaru as the main damage dealers, the Ino Shikacho trio, or the regular Konoha Jonin, everyone had played a part, some larger, some smaller. The Konoha force was crucial, but your final strike, Mu Yue, was decisive, Orochimaru said, shaking his head. Taking down a Jinchuriki was no small feat, and Mu Yue's Flying Thunder God technique had been essential. After a brief exchange, Orochimaru moved on to coordinate the next tasks. He knew how to balance praise and distance. The battle had been won, but the East Bank front wasn't yet fully resolved. Yagura Karatachi had escaped with a sizable contingent of hidden mist shinobi, and Orochimaru still had reports to file and operations to plan. When Orochimaru left, Obito hurried forward, eagerness written on his face. Mu Yue-sensei, what was that jutsu where you made a little sun appear in the sky? He'd been stunned by it. Turning night into daylight seemed like sage-level power. Solar flare technique, Mu Yue answered after a second. The original name Great Sunny Day felt awkward, so he'd given it a more Hokage-style name. Solar flare technique, Obito repeated, eyes wide. Perfect. A blazing sun appears. Awesome. Can I learn it? Yes, you can, Mu Yue said. Obito had already imagined grandiose titles for himself. Obito of the Blazing Flame, Konoha's fierce fire tiger. But I don't recommend you learn it right now. That second sentence snuffed out Obito's excitement. Why not? Isn't it powerful? Obito asked, confused. If Mu Yue hadn't used that technique, the Konoha force would have had a much harder time. It's powerful overall, Mu Yue explained, but not as practical in everyday small-scale fights as it seems. He related what he'd learned testing the jutsu. Solar flare was effectively a domain that amplified fire release and suppressed water release. Its range, intensity, and duration all depended on chakra spent. In testing, burning 40,000 chakra produced a solar flare covering a 200-meter radius for only 5 minutes. On the East Bank, Mu Yue had poured in far more chakra and reduced intensity to cover the entire battlefield. In squad or solo skirmishes, 200 meters is easy to step out of, and sacrificing intensity for range often proves worse than simply using repeatedly stronger techniques with flame-breathing chakra mode. Also, it's very difficult to learn, Mu Yue added. That was the decisive point. Solar flare required a high level of fire-nature transformation, the kind of boost Obito could barely meet even with flame-breathing chakra mode, and it was intrinsically hard to train. At Obito's current pace, Mu Yue estimated it would take at least half a year of focused study to use it well. That was time better spent on other training that would improve his overall strength. For that reason, Mu Yue hadn't frowned on teaching more techniques in principle. His disciples could always choose not to use an unused jutsu, but Solar Flare's training cost made it a poor choice now. He compared it to Thoughtless Blade, a lightning-release sword technique. Though harder in some respects, its training itself produced measurable gains, so Mu Yue had taught it to Kakashi once he met the requirements. Obito's disappointment showed, but he accepted it. Strength came first. No technique was worth slowing his progress. While Mu Yue chatted and casually healed a few injured, Metkai, Akimichi Choza, and others soon found him. Akimichi Choza laughed loudly and clapped Mu Yue on the shoulder. Mu Yue, today's victory's thanks to you. If that beast had slammed down like it wanted, I'd have been in real trouble. If you ever need help, say the word. I'm no match for you, but I have channels for rare medicinal ingredients. Mu Yue's interest piqued. The Akimichi clan did indeed cultivate secret medicines for their techniques. The Nara clan traded in medicinal ingredients. We're comrades, Mu Yue replied gently. But I do need some rare ingredients. I can refine the restorative medicine myself, but a few of the components are extremely rare. Choza laughed and threw an arm around Nara Shikaku. then you've come to the right place. Konoha's medical supply lines come through Shikaku's family. Give him a list. Nara Shikaku nodded. If you give me a list, I'll have someone look into it. The Ino Shikacho were inseparable. Mu Yue saving Choza counted as saving the Nara's own, so Shikaku was happy to help. Mu Yue smiled gratefully. He planned to buy common ingredients himself and have Shikaku source the rare ones. The medicine's effects were too remarkable for wide, casual use. Orochimaru didn't order an overnight pursuit of the hidden mist. He let everyone rest, then sent out large sweeps along the east coast during the day. Yagura had apparently guessed Orochimaru would not relent and fled back to the land of water with most of his force. Only a few hidden mist shinobi were left behind to gather intelligence. With that, the East Bank conflict closed as a decisive Konoha victory. Back in Konoha, a conference convened in the Hokage's meeting room. Danzo Shimura could barely contain his triumph. Hiruzen, if you'd listened and sent Mu Yue earlier, Konoha might have won even sooner, he crowed. Danzo had been pushing to deploy Mu Yue to the front. When Orochimaru was shifted to the East Bank, Hiruzen had finally agreed. Danzo felt vindicated. Mu Yue's success reflected on him and also stung Hiruzen. Hiruzen bristled but kept his composure. Mu Yue had been half his student. His pride in Mu Yue's progress tempered any humiliation. Perhaps the tempering did make him shine brighter on the battlefield, Hiruzen replied. He didn't deny Danzo's role in recommending Mu Yue. Danzo had influence, but Hiruzen reminded the room that he had taught Mu Yue nature transformation and had a hand in his development. Homura Mitokado moved to smooth things over. Both contributed. Danzo discovered Mu Yue, Hiruzen nurtured him. Let's focus on the matter at hand, dealings with the hidden mist. Danzo calmed and then spoke bluntly. Make the hidden mist pay reparations for their losses, or we continue the war. Konoha had not only killed the Three Tails Jinchuriki and routed the mist troops on the East Bank, they had also eliminated powerful hidden mist shinobi like Haku and Mangetsu. Danzo would have liked to press the advantage. Hiruzen, however, had read Orochimaru's intelligence. Yagura retreated with a considerable force back to the land of water. The hidden mist still fields a Six Tails Jinchuriki. They're not helpless. From the casualty reports, only about 700 mist shinobi died on the East Bank. That's painful but not crippling for a village of their size. So what do you suggest? Danzo demanded. We can't just accept unconditional peace after such a victory. Of course not, Hiruzen said. But we can choose not to press them now. They've withdrawn. They've suffered losses that should deter them from provoking Konoha again for a while. We'll ignore them temporarily and deal with other battlefields first. When the time is right, we'll address Hidden Mist. His plan balanced face-saving and long-term strategy. No immediate reparations, no unconditional peace, but a tacit pause. Homura and Utane Koharu agreed, calling it the most pragmatic approach. The council passed Hiruzen's proposal 3-1. Danzo snorted but fell silent. He'd had his moment of vindication, but would not press the issue. The meeting moved to rewards and promotions for the East Bank fighters. Given Obito's contributions, bolstered by Orochimaru's recommendation, Hiruzen promoted him to full jonin. Obito's theory might lag, but his battlefield prowess was undeniable, and wartime calls for decisive promotions. To celebrate and publicize the victory, Hiruzen ordered the Leaf newspaper to print an extra issue. Words spread fast. East Bank battlefield, great victory. Hidden Mist, Three Tails Jinchuriki killed. Invaders routed. Tsunade, reading a copy Shizune had grabbed at the market, paused at a headline that singled out Mu Yue. The tacit duel between Sannin Orochimaru and Konoha's new generation solar flare Mu Yue, slaying a full-tailed beast. The nickname stuck. Mu Yue's solar flare display had been striking enough that reporters dubbed him Solar Flare Mu Yue. Tsunade, who mostly cared about Mu Yue's cooking and didn't track his combat record closely, blinked in surprise. If Mu Yue hadn't played a major role, he wouldn't have been listed alongside Orochimaru. She tossed the paper aside and relaxed. A jonin's rise was interesting, but life continued. Across Konoha, the name Solar Flare Mu Yue spread quickly. Former colleagues who'd known him as a jonin and vice principal were surprised and proud, yet some couldn't help comparing him to Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash. Both were young, similar in age and hair tone, both capable of the Flying Thunder God technique. Some argued Mu Yue was stronger because he'd helped kill a Jinchuriki. Others favored Minato for having held his own against the new AB combo. Either way, everyone agreed both were among the strongest of the new generation, and now the whole shinobi world had something new to talk about. 463. Winning Impact Land of Water, Hidden Mist Village, Mizukage Building, Conference Room. 5 high-ranking Hidden Mist officials sat around the large table, faces tight with anger. Their mood stood in stark contrast to Konoha's celebratory high command. What the Mist had hoped would be an opportunity to exploit Konoha had instead become a disaster. They had lost 5 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, and worse, those prized swords, crafted and handed down for generations, had been seized by Konoha. For the Hidden Mist, the swords were as important as the men who wielded them. A swordsman could be replaced, but without the blade, the position itself lost meaning. Even more humiliating was the death of the Three-Tails Jinchuriki. The beast had died outright, leaving the village with only the Six-Tails Jinchuriki until the Three-Tails could be revived. 2 celebrated Hidden Mist warriors, Haku and Hozuki Mangetsu, had fallen on the battlefield, their deaths elevating Mu Yue's reputation all the more. Compared to these losses, ordinary troop casualties were relatively light. Yagura Karatachi's measures had at least preserved the core strength of the Hidden Mist forces. "We must decide what to do about Yagura Karatachi," the third Mizukage said coldly, his expression hard. He sounded determined to punish Yagura harshly. The other officials exchanged glances, uncertain of the Mizukage's intent. Everyone knew Yagura was his favored candidate for Mizukage. Was the third Mizukage finally ready to abandon him, or was he preparing a punishment calculated to appear severe while sparing Yagura's prospects? The silence made the position awkward. When a commander betrays the village's trust and makes repeated wrong judgments in major operations that cost us dearly, the village must see him punished, the third Mizukage continued. At that, the assembled leaders understood. The Mizukage did not intend to completely disown Yagura. He wanted a punishment that preserved appearances and steadied public opinion. Although we lost the war, Yagura did prevent the Hidden Mist forces from suffering catastrophic losses, Genshi said after a pause. He preserved our strength. That will prevent us from being completely helpless in the future. Genshi did not want to spark internal conflict over the succession to the fourth Mizukage. The village was already weak. Besides, there were no better candidates among Yagura's generation. Yagura was the most capable and had the right character. "The blame doesn't rest entirely on Yagura," added the Hidden Mist Anbu leader. "We had the advantage originally. It was Haku leading the swordsman who was defeated by Hayarimutsu that turned the tide. Haku bears great responsibility for this failure." Pointing at the dead made blame safe, and Haku's death offered a convenient scapegoat. "Suikazan Fuguki and the others mishandled things as well," the Mist advisor continued, directing attention to the fallen swordsman who could no longer respond. After several exchanges, the consensus formed. Yagura would take formal blame for the failure, but would not be ruined. The major tactical errors would be pinned on the deceased, Haku, Fuguki, and thus the living leadership could be preserved. No one dared single out Hozuki Mangetsu, not because he performed especially well, but because the Hozuki clan still held considerable influence and their feelings had to be considered. The third Mizukage nodded. Yagura had faults, but he had also done what he could. The primary mistakes lay elsewhere. His sentence was formal, stripped of current duties and reassigned to the Anbu, where he would continue to serve and atone for his mistakes. "The 5 swords captured by Konoha must be retrieved," the Mist advisor insisted. "Those blades, Samahata and Hiramikare among them, are our heritage." Recovering the swords was vital, but how? "We either mount another invasion into the Land of Fire and force Konoha to return them, or we negotiate, sign a peace treaty, and get them back that way," said the Anbu leader. Having been attacked, key aggressor, the Hidden Mist could not expect Konoha to hand over the blades for free. Konoha was fighting on multiple fronts. If the Mist sought negotiation and didn't press excessive demands, Konoha might agree. But Genshi was against another immediate war. "Konoha's morale is high," he said. "Ours is low. Restarting a conflict now would be to our disadvantage." "No peace treaty," the third Mizukage cut in flatly. We must retrieve the swords, but not through such humiliation. To sue for peace after attacking and being beaten would make the mist look ridiculous. The third Mizukage refused to let that narrative stand during his tenure. The Anbu leader could say nothing. If neither outright war nor subservient peace was acceptable, then what? Then stand down and make no unnecessary moves, the third Mizukage decided. We will wait and watch. He believed that with Konoha overextended, Hidden Mist could sit back while its enemies exhausted each other. When the time was right, if Konoha weakened, they could strike, reclaim honor, and take back the swords. He did not seriously consider Konoha achieving a total, lasting victory. After the meeting, Genshi sighed and left the Mizukage building. The campaign had exposed the Mist's weaknesses. Their two Jinchuriki were not perfect. Neither could consciously complete a full-tailed beast transformation. Hidden Mist's new generation lagged behind Konoha's. Konoha had Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash, on par with Hidden Cloud's new combos, and Hayate Mugetsu, who had slain a Jinchuriki. Few in the Mist had comparable reputations. Even Yagura's generation seemed outmatched. Aside from Yagura himself, none could be placed next to the legendary Sannin. Haku and Mangetsu, despite their renown, had been overwhelmed and killed by Mu Yue. Lord Genshi, do you have a moment? I've hit a snag in my water release training, Mei Terumi said brightly when she caught up with him. What's the trouble? Genshi asked with a kind smile. Mei Terumi was a genius. Genshi had noticed during the joint chuunin exams. He believed she could lead the next generation in the Hidden Mist. She explained the problem quickly. Genshi, once a famed water release master in the mist, gave her advice after a moment's thought. Mei Terumi bowed deeply in thanks. You must train harder. Your Konoha opponents have already made a name for themselves, Genshi encouraged with a chuckle. 3 of Konoha's 4 celebrated young geniuses had been at the chuunin exams Mei Terumi attended. She remembered defeating Uchiha Obito once in the second round, but she had little awareness of the full scope of Konoha's recent exploits. When Genshi outlined Kakashi Hatake and Metkai battlefield reputations and how they'd repelled the 7 swordsmen head-on, Mei Terumi's eyes widened. She had always respected the value of the 7 swordsmen, each member personally selected by the Mizukage and armed with legendary blades. To see them repulsed and Haku slain by Konoha's new generation was an unsettling revelation. Mei Terumi resolved to train harder to close the gap. News of Konoha's victory and Mu Yue's slaying of a Jinchuriki spread quickly. The Leaf Village's deliberate propaganda amplified it. The other great nations took notice. Land of Earth, Iwagakure, Tsuchikage's office. Hidden Mist losing a Jinchuriki caused Onoki to frown. Konoha's threat must be re-evaluated, he said, reading fresh intelligence. He'd expected the Mist to drag Konoha out on the East Coast battlefield for years to wear them down. Now a new name nagged at him. Riyang Hayate Mugetsu. Hayate Mugetsu, also called Mu Yue by some reports, was proving hard to ignore. He possessed a potent flying thunder god-type teleport, powerful fire release, and respectable water-ice techniques. Onoki resolved to accelerate his own plans. Konoha was too dangerous as it stood. They needed more enemies for the village to face. If Hayate's firepower was significant, Onoki thought, then pit him against Rain's ninja masters and see how he measured up. The Shinobi sect with its mysterious Nagato could be a useful foil. Hidden Cloud, Raikage's office. How did the Mist get routed so quickly? The third Raikage spat, less concerned than surprised. Kumogakure had never fully committed to Konoha. Many of their forces were busy pressing Tsunagakure. His plan had been to exploit Tsunagakure's weakness, then strike Konoha and finally Iwagakure, proving Kumogakure's dominance. Hidden Mist had little consequence in his calculations. Island warfare was messy, and 3 victories against the great villages were enough to assert supremacy. Perfect. Hidden Mist's weakness is one less thing to worry about, he said. He also believed in Killer Bee. Once Bee mastered the Eight Tails' power, neither Hayate Mugetsu nor Minato Namikaze would stand against Kumogakure's new AB combo. With Bee's talent, the third Raikage saw a brighter future for their combo than under Bee. Hidden Sand, Kazakage's office. Rasa read the reports with mounting concern. To do this while fighting on 3 fronts, Konoha is dangerous, he muttered. Geographically, Konoha was central. Only a few countries or a strip of sea separated it from others. If Konoha decided to, they could push into the wind and directly threaten Tsunagakure. Rasa wanted Konoha weakened, ideally by Iwagakure and others, so that Tsunagakure could remain safe. If Konoha kept this momentum, Rasa knew his village might have to act, and when that time came, peace with Kumogakure would be a preferable choice to warfare with Konoha. Even on the front lines, Konoha's commanders heard the rumors. Minato Namikaze, operating on the Land of Hot Water battlefield, felt a twinge of pride learning about Mu Yue. When Minato first met Mu Yue, the other had been only a chuunin instructor. Now, just over 2 years later, Mu Yue had become a world-famous shinobi. Minato and Kushina had once taught Mu Yue sealing techniques for his safety, never imagining such rapid fame. Minato smiled at memories of Kushina complaining she wanted to taste Mu Yue's cooking and thinking she'd bribe or trick the Anbu to get it. He wondered if Mu Yue would return to Konoha for rest. After intense campaigns, temporary respite back at the village was normal. He wrote a letter home. Their paths had crossed, often on different battlefields, but direct contact had been sparse. As Minato expected, once the mist retreated, Orochimaru and Mu Yue returned to Konoha, while a contingent remained to guard the border against surprise attacks. Konoha held a ceremony for their East Coast forces. Hiruzen Sarutobi personally recounted the campaign's achievement, offered condolences for the fallen, and inscribed names on a memorial stone. Rewards were distributed, and those eligible were promoted. Obito, promoted from chuunin to jonin, nearly cried when he received his new ninja ID. It had been hard-earned. No longer would he be defined as Mu Yue's only chuunin disciple. As Uchiha Obito, he could stand tall on his own. His rivalry with Kakashi shifted. Now both were jonin, and Obito felt a hard-won pride. Mu Yue's merits were recorded and rewarded as well. 464. Obito's reward for being promoted to jonin. Uchiha Obito has diligently cultivated and accumulated merits to be promoted to jonin, receiving rewards. Chakra 2400, item draw scroll, unknown Pokemon egg, only Uchiha Obito can hatch. On his way home, Mu Yue stopped at a clear stream to wash his hands, then clicked to draw. Item draw scroll used, received, unknown Pokemon egg. Mu Yue blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected that Obito's single promotion would generate 2 Pokemon eggs, and the one he drew wasn't locked the way system rewards often were. He had assumed he'd get something tied to Obito's abilities. Instead, he decided, if so, I'll give it to Rin when she's promoted to full jonin. Every other disciple already had one. Rin Nohara was the only one missing an apprentice partner, and that would look awkward. The system had provided 2, so one would certainly go to Rin. Rin could already contract with the Shikotsu forest to summon Katsuyu, but a ninja could never have too many powerful companion beasts. Nin beasts, and especially Pokemon in this world, often had strong combat capabilities that could make up for weaknesses Rin might have. The only one losing out was Obito. His reward was effectively handed to Rin, but Mu Yue suspected that, if Obito knew, he'd probably be pleased. Anything that strengthened Rin only made her safer. Back home, Mu Yue found a letter from Minato Namikaze in his mailbox. He settled onto the living room couch and opened it. In this early winter, I heard about your deeds on the East Bank battlefield, Mu Yue, and I was incredibly excited. The invaders have finally been driven from our homeland. That kind of triumph keeps even the coldest winter wind from chilling me. Mu Yue nodded. That was exactly the kind of morale boost Hiruzen Sarutobi had been aiming for by promoting certain people, to inspire Konoha shinobi fighting elsewhere. Minato continued, briefly outlining his recent situation and events on the Land of Hot Water front. Since we parted in Lulan, I estimate it's been over half a year. I returned to Konoha a few months back to rest, but you were already on the East Bank battlefield. Here where I am, Kumogakure and Tsunagakure are busy, so the Land of Hot Water front hasn't been as active. Perhaps in 2 or 3 months I'll be back in Konoha. I hope we're both a little freer then and can meet. Minato closed with a request that made Mu Yue smile. If you return to Konoha and have time, Mu Yue, please look after Kushina. She really misses your cooking. After so long without it, I'm sure she's been dreaming about your dishes. That line revealed how deeply Minato loved Kushina, worrying about her meals even on the front lines. Mu Yue put the letter away, tidied up, then stepped back out and activated his Byakugan, hoping to chance upon Kushina in town. He had no direct way to contact her. In the past, Kushina had passed messages through Ambu, and Mu Yue couldn't be sure she knew he was back in Konoha. Because the nine-tailed limited where Kushina could roam, Mu Yue figured that as long as she was out for a walk, his Byakugan would let him spot her. He was lucky. Kushina was out shopping, humming to herself and clearly in a good mood. Mu Yue took his time and approached as if he were merely strolling, reasonable behavior for someone recently returned from the front. Mu Yue, long time no see. I actually ran into you. Kushina spotted him about 10 meters away and waved, smiling. Long time no see, Mu Yue replied, feigning surprise and walking over. Kushina jogged up, patted his shoulder and wearing a triumphant grin, crowed. A few days ago, I saw the paper praising your military deeds and figured you might be back soon. I came out hoping to run into you, and I did. You're amazing. If Minato were here, he might not have thought to do that, she teased, hands on her hips. Mu Yue laughed and praised her quick thinking. Then Kushina's expression shifted into genuine astonishment. You're even stronger than I thought, Mu Yue. You killed a Jinchuriki. How terrifying, she said with a thumbs up. As the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, Kushina understood how dangerous tailed beasts were. She knew how hard becoming a Jinchuriki had been for her, and how perilous fighting a complete tailed beast would be. In the past, Mu Yue had made 3 main impressions on her: an excellent teacher, a kind friend who cooked amazing food, and a talented sealing technique prodigy. She had often worried for his safety and taken teaching him sealing techniques very seriously. But now, after hearing of his battlefield success, she had a completely new view. A warrior who could dominate battle. Your fame's even eclipsed Minato's lately, Kushina griped playfully. If I hadn't read the Ambu paper, I would have thought there was someone with the same name, but called Ri-yang. People around Konoha keep talking about someone named Ri-yang Mu Yue. They chatted as they walked until they reached the small restaurant where Mu Yue had once borrowed the kitchen to cook for Kushina. The sign still hung. Business looked much better than it had been. This place is still open, Kushina said, memories flickering across her face. She remembered being newly made the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, irritable from the beast's chakra while Minato was away, and how Mu Yue's cooking had soothed her. That meal had been unforgettable. As they approached, the restaurant owner spotted Mu Yue and brightened. Lord Mu Yue, he called out, and the whole room turned. Mu Yue's reputation had spread far. Even civilians knew of his role on the East Bank battlefield. The customers followed the owner's lead and respectfully echoed, Lord Mu Yue. The owner hurried over, gratitude written all over him. Thank you. If it weren't for experiencing the depth of your cooking back then, my restaurant would probably have gone under. Mu Yue waved him off. No need to thank me. That's all your own doing. The owner insisted, then turned to Kushina and asked, Do you still need to borrow the kitchen? I can spare it any time. It's your busiest hour. We won't cause trouble, Mu Yue declined politely. The owner surprised him. No trouble at all. I have a small experimental kitchen I don't often use. I just stocked fresh ingredients today. Kushina looked as if she wanted to say something, then sealed her lips. Then we'll take it, Mu Yue agreed. Since it wouldn't interfere with service and Kushina clearly wanted this, he had no reason to refuse. Inside the tiny kitchen, Mu Yue quickly scanned the ingredients and planned the menu. Kushina, a little embarrassed at eating for free, eagerly offered to assist. As the aromas began to rise and the dishes came together under Mu Yue's practiced hands, Kushina's eyes widened and she could barely contain herself. Braised pork belly, squirrel mandarin fish, she murmured, recalling she had even dreamed about the braised pork with preserved vegetables the night before. Mu Yue didn't keep her waiting long. Finally he stopped, and they sat down to eat right there in the small cooking area. I'm eating, Kushina said with a mock formality, then bit into a piece of braised pork and was immediately transported. Pure bliss crossed her face. For a moment she felt freed from everything. It's back, it's all back, she thought, as a surge of relief and pleasure swept through her. She dove into the food, taking a bit from each dish, then unleashed her true appetite and devoured it all like a whirlwind. It's too delicious. Compared to your cooking, the Ambu food is barely edible, she gushed, nearly in tears. Sometimes she wished for long-distance teleportation jutsu so Mu Yue could cook for her even while he was on mission, but she knew she couldn't ask that of him. In the quiet moments right then, she missed Minato too. "You two are so in sync," Mu Yue teased. "Minato even sent me a letter asking me to make you a meal, saying you must be dreaming about it after not having it so long." "What? Why make it sound like I'm only thinking about food?" "Maybe Minato was imagining it himself," Kushina replied, blushing. She had actually dreamed about the meal the night before and felt sheepish that Mu Yue had guessed. "Perhaps," Mu Yue smiled and dropped the subject. "Let's go for a walk and digest. I want to test if you've been keeping up with your sealing technique studies." Kushina quickly shifted gears and peppered him with more advanced sealing questions in a nearby pavilion. Mu Yue answered calmly and confidently, far beyond what one would expect from someone who had studied sealing for only a couple of years. "You must train hard," she said admiringly. Mu Yue let her believe his progress was the result of diligent, constant study. The truth was that much of it had been supplemented directly by the system. Still, Kushina taught him more, feeling he might soon outgrow her lessons. His talent and effort were obvious. When they parted, Mu Yue told her to send a messenger if she ever wanted a hot meal again. The next morning, Mu Yue made his way to the south border forest and found Obito waiting there, looking expectant. Obito woke up earlier than usual. He had just become a jonin, and from his and Kakashi's experience, Mu Yue would give him a jonin gift. He'd been looking forward to it, secretly hoping for a nin beast with great potential. Still, Mu Yue had mentioned earlier that he didn't have any nin beast eggs on hand, so Obito worried his gift might be something else. He'd be grateful for anything Mu Yue gave, of course, but if Kakashi had something Obito didn't, the disappointment would sting a little. When Mu Yue approached, Obito watched him expectantly. Mu Yue looked unencumbered. Obito strained his eyes, searching for an egg, but Mu Yue didn't appear to be hiding anything. The nin beast eggs Mu Yue had given before were sizable and not something you could easily conceal on your person. Seeing Obito's crestfallen expression, Mu Yue paused, thought for a moment, then reached into his system backpack and produced a large egg out of thin air. He held it out with a warm smile. "Obito, congratulations on becoming a jonin," Mu Yue said, handing him a nin beast egg that only Obito could hatch. Joy wiped the disappointment off Obito's face. He hugged the egg like a treasure, grinning foolishly. "Teacher Mu Yue, thank you. I'll hatch this nin beast and train it to be the strongest," he exclaimed, clenching his fists. All his earlier grumbling about being not really fond of nin beasts had been bluster. In ninja stories, the protagonist always had an awe-inspiring partner, a ferocious tiger, a majestic lion, or a flying dragon. Obito wanted one like that too. Mu Yue nodded, smiling. The system notification popped up in his mind. You gifted a Pokemon egg to your disciple. Due to your disciple's immense gratitude, you received a great critical reward, water release, heavenly tier. Along with the message came a surge of cultivation experience tied to heavenly tier. Mu Yue had seen heavenly tier before in class, but only at a beginner level. Now his proficiency leapt to mastery. Unlike grand techniques such as Water Dragon Bullet, heavenly tier was a pinpoint water release jutsu, fast, highly penetrating, and difficult to detect thanks to its needle-thin form. It was a useful addition. Obito kept hugging the egg until Kakashi and Shisui arrived. Kakashi strolled past with that indifferent look he always wore. He'd received his nin beast egg earlier and already hatched his companion. "How did you know I got promoted to jonin?" Obito asked when he saw Kakashi. "Kakashi, who asked you?" "Becoming a jonin isn't such a big deal," Kakashi retorted. "Look at Shisui. He became a jonin at 8. Now that's something worth talking about." Kakashi hadn't progressed much with the Thoughtless Blade and had been focusing on his own training, but he couldn't resist a jab at Obito when Obito was being so pleased with himself. "If you're too idle, train more. Otherwise you won't even get past the second round in the next internal match." "Shisui's also mastered flame-breathing chakra mode," Kakashi added, then slipped into his cultivation state. Obito fell silent, clutching the egg. Compared to Shisui, who'd broken through early and picked up another armament hockey secret technique, Obito felt inadequate. He scratched his head. His own flame-breathing was stronger than Kakashi's, but not enough to make up for missing an extra armament hockey technique. The small consolation was that everyone's chakra was limited right now. If Shisui used full flame breathing in a fight, his reserves for armament hockey would suffer, and vice versa. Reluctantly, Obito set the egg somewhere safe and began training. Always being at the bottom in the internal matches burned him. It wasn't just pride, the punishments were cruel. He trained until 5:30 p.m. At 6, just as Mu Yue had finished preparing dinner, a knock came at his door. He didn't open it immediately. He activated his Byakugan and looked toward the entrance. The visitor was Hiruzen Sarutobi. Mu Yue walked to the door and opened it, pretending surprise at seeing the busy third Hokage on his doorstep. "Third Hokage-sama, please come in," he said quickly. Hiruzen smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry to interrupt dinner, Mu Yue. I just left the Hokage building and had some matters to attend to." "Nonsense. Third Hokage-sama, have you eaten?" Mu Yue replied with his usual practiced hospitality. "Not yet," Hiruzen answered. "If I had time, I would have invited you to the Hokage building long ago. You're the great hero of the East Bank battlefield, Mu Yue," he joked, flattering but friendly. Mu Yue deflected the praise. "Orochimaru-sama is the true hero of the East Bank battlefield," he said with a straight face. Hiruzen laughed. "Then I will look forward to your cooking, Mu Yue," he said, and they sat down. Hiruzen had his reasons for coming in person beyond politeness. He wanted to soften his image in Mu Yue's eyes, to be seen as an ordinary elder rather than the exalted Hokage. Sharing a meal was a good way to start. The first bite changed Hiruzen's expression. He found himself momentarily speechless. For a moment he felt as though he'd become a wild beast racing across a grassland, overcome by a sense of freedom and delight, an illusion born entirely of how delicious the food was. He realized he hadn't been under any genjutsu. The effect was simply the dish's astounding taste. "Mu Yue, you need to stop being so modest," Hiruzen said at last, savoring the flavors. "This isn't just knowing a thing or two. It's unparalleled." He searched for words and failed to find enough. Mu Yue waved off the compliment. "You flatter me, third Hokage-sama. The ninja world is vast. Unparalleled is too much." "If only you and Jiraiya could balance each other out," Hiruzen sighed, smiling helplessly as he reached for another helping. He fell into a blissful silence, where food was the only topic until the plates were cleared. When they were done, Hiruzen remembered his true purpose. "It's good to talk like this. If we were in the Hokage office, there wouldn't even be a chair for you, Mu Yue," he joked. "Relax, I'm not here to discuss anything major. Just treat me like an ordinary elder, and we can chat." Mu Yue's face softened. Hiruzen spoke as both a leader and a man wanting a simple conversation. "Asuma's been training hard lately, mastering a lot of wind release and fire release ninjutsu." Hiruzen began, genuinely wanting to talk about everyday things. "He's a diligent kid," Mu Yue replied. "He sometimes acts rebellious and rough toward you, third Hokage-sama, but deep down, he wants your approval." Hiruzen sighed. He'd been Hokage for years and knew his son's heart. Still, he worried Asuma might grow complacent. They talked on small matters of the academy and Asuma's progress, then broader topics like the battlefield and the state of the ninja world. At one point, Hiruzen asked, bluntly and with a politician's caution, "Mu Yue, who do you think is most qualified to become the fourth Hokage?" Mu Yue, a former root shinobi, understood the political stakes. Hiruzen suspected Danzo might try to sway him toward supporting Orochimaru, so the question was careful. Mu Yue considered, then gave a measured reply. "I think Orochimaru-sama, Jiraiya-sama, and Lady Tsunade are all qualified." Hiruzen almost laughed in exasperation. He had asked for one name and gotten all three of Mu Yue's seniors instead, but that was fine. It meant Mu Yue wouldn't be easily manipulated into a blind endorsement. Hiruzen pressed on. "What qualities do they each have that make you believe they're fit to be Hokage?" Mu Yue spoke calmly, praising each of the Sannin. Jiraiya's strength, Orochimaru's battlefield merits, Tsunade's heart. He didn't want to get entangled in the succession struggle. Whoever Hiruzen wanted could be Hokage. Mu Yue's relationships with all of them were good. Tsunade, the friend and teacher, Jiraiya, the veteran who thought highly of him, Orochimaru eager to nurture him, and Minato, a close friend. No matter the outcome, Mu Yue's path wouldn't be derailed. Hiruzen nodded, then warned that each of them had Wie, Nesses too. He'd expected Mu Yue to avoid taking sides, and the younger man's diplomacy reassured him. They moved on to cultivation topics. Hiruzen offered advice on combination ninjutsu and gently asked Mu Yue to keep an eye on Asuma. "Mu Yue, if you have the time, please guide Asuma. He listens to you," Hiruzen said before leaving. "I'll come by tomorrow to check his progress." Mu Yue agreed. Asuma felt almost like a half-disciple. Mu Yue would help him when he could. What Mu Yue didn't expect was that shortly after Hiruzen left, a message from Root arrived. 466. Xiao Gang and Master Mu Yue. Mu Yue went to the Root headquarters in secret, as Danzo Shimura had instructed. He had to admit Hiruzen Sarutobi handled people better. When both of them wanted a meeting, Hiruzen had simply dropped by Mu Yue's home after work. Danzo, however, insisted on acting like a commanding officer, ordering Mu Yue to come to Root. Danzo might have been thinking about influence and didn't want Hiruzen to know Mu Yue still had ties with Root. Mu Yue understood that, even if he found Danzo's manner a bit heavy-handed. Lord Danzo. The moment he entered the office, Mu Yue switched to the deferential posture Root expected, measured voice, careful expression. Danzo's thin smile showed mild satisfaction. From Mu Yue's bearing, he could tell Mu Yue still considered himself loyal both to Root and to Konoha. "You did very well on the East Coast campaign," Danzo said. "You've shown the spirit Konoha ninjas should have." Danzo rarely praised anyone. He believed praise pushed people to greater heights, but Mu Yue's performance had been exemplary. More importantly, Mu Yue's actions had given Danzo the chance to embarrass Hiruzen at the high-level meeting. Since the war began, Danzo had bristled at Hiruzen's dominance. This time he had finally felt his foresight vindicated. "As a Root ninja and as a Konoha ninja, that's what I must do," Mu Yue replied, voice steady. "I won't spare those who attack Konoha." If Hiruzen had been in front of him, Mu Yue would have been more modest, deflecting praise and stressing the team and the commander. Facing Danzo, though, he matched a sterner tone. It was simply adapting to his audience. "Exactly. Never be soft on our enemies. If I weren't tied to overseeing things here, I'd go to the field myself and teach the hidden mist a lesson." Danzo's voice brimmed with approval. If he were younger, he might have even considered grooming Mu Yue as a successor. But Danzo wasn't about to create a successor until it was necessary. If his body could still serve, why give away power? A Root operative brought forward several scrolls and set them on Danzo's desk. "I hear you take an interest in sealing techniques. These contain a large chunk of the Vortex clan's sealing knowledge. Advanced work," Danzo announced. He'd been worried Mu Yue might be subtly swayed by Hiruzen's training, so he decided to give a substantial reward. Mu Yue was no longer a simple Root foot soldier. He was a battlefield asset. If he drifted from Root, Danzo would have little recourse. But of course, Danzo was sure that wouldn't happen unless Mu Yue had big ambitions, in which case Root would investigate. "Thank you, Lord Danzo." Mu Yue accepted them with proper gratitude. Kushina had already taught him the orthodox vortex sealing methods, so some of the scrolls were late for him, but Danzo had compiled real knowledge. There would still be techniques Mu Yue hadn't seen. "I also watched your wind release demonstration at Hiruzen's. A decent show, but not yet master level. This is some of my own wind release cultivation experience," Danzo added, placing a blue scroll on the table. Mu Yue's surprised look was followed by genuine interest. Danzo's praise and gifts were clearly intended to bind Mu Yue's loyalty. "I've watched you grow since you were young. When you joined Root, I knew you could be useful to Konoha," Danzo said, casting a glance down memory lane. Mu Yue listened with a faint nostalgic expression, but inside he remained unmoved. Danzo's praise and reminders of the past were standard tools, rewards and flattery to reinforce his image in Mu Yue's mind. But Mu Yue was not an ordinary Root member anymore. He could use Root's resources when convenient, and if necessary, abandon Danzo without worry. He was no longer the chuunin instructor from years ago. Now he was one of Konoha's strongest new generation shinobi, Yang Mu Yue, a name that could stand beside legends like the Yellow Flash. "Strength is important, but planning and strategy are too," Danzo said, lowering his voice and laying the hint on thick. "When problems come up, don't forget Root, don't forget me." What could Mu Yue say but agree? After a little more obligatory theater, he left. Back home, he bathed and began studying the sealing scrolls Danzo had given him. For Mu Yue, Root and Danzo were now resources to be used judiciously, play along when needed, extract benefits, and discard if they became a threat. The next morning, Mu Yue had agreed with Hiruzen to supervise Asuma's training. He sent a shadow clone to the south border forest to cover his other commitment, while his real body walked to the training ground. As usual, Asuma was early. Mu Yue had left 10 minutes ahead and still found him waiting. "Good morning, Teacher Mu Yue," Asuma called, jogging over. "Good morning," Mu Yue replied, smiling and mentally scanning him. The appraisal ran across his vision. Name: Asuma Sarutobi, Chakra, 4800, Skills: Wind Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Proficient, 2200, 3000, Fire Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Proficient, 7 3000, Wind Breathing, Beginner, 400, 500. By chuunin standards, Asuma's numbers were solid, but he'd trailed behind peers like Kakashi for various reasons. "I always knew you'd become famous in the ninja world," Asuma said with a proud grin. "I told you so when you were teaching me. You're my ideal ninja. Humble, kind, talented." "You're still the same," Mu Yue chuckled. Asuma's compliments were the kind that would make Hiruzen roll his eyes. "You should be Hokage," Asuma blurted. "You'd surpass all the previous Hokage." "Say that around me if you like, but not around the third," Mu Yue warned. "As if he'd give it up gracefully," Asuma muttered, pouting at the thought of Hiruzen's stubbornness. "All right, let's focus on training. Shadow Clone Technique." Mu Yue formed the seal and created a clone. "Fight that clone as if your life depends on it. I want to see your real level." Appraisal plus live combat gave the most accurate picture for crafting a training plan. Asuma used everything he had against the clone. He knew Mu Yue's strength was immense, and even a clone wouldn't be easy to overcome. After the sparring, Mu Yue let Asuma rest and drafted a training regimen. "The focus is wind breathing," Mu Yue explained, handing over the plan. "First, master the constant state of wind breathing, then refine your wind release nature transformation." In the early stages, Mu Yue believed a shinobi should concentrate on mastering one chakra nature to proficiency before branching out, except for rare geniuses who could advance multiple paths at once. Mu Yue also arranged a special promotion track for Rin Nohara. She wouldn't be made jonin outright like Obito had been, but she could pass an assessment to earn promotion. Rin's theory was good, but her combat needed honing. To improve both her fighting skill and medical ninjutsu simultaneously, Mu Yue invited Lady Tsunade to consult on Rin's special training plan. 3 months of dinners plus 20 ninja killer character cards, no less, Tsunade declared. Tsunade hadn't had one of Mu Yue's meals in ages, and the ninja killer character cards, little memory-based character designs, hadn't been updated for some time. Mu Yue negotiated. "I might not stay in Konoha 3 full months, and 20 cards is too many. There aren't even 20 worth doing now." Mu Yue knew how to make the reward desirable without making it trivial. "All right, 10 cards, Tsunade considered. "Dinners can't be reduced. If you go on a mission before 3 months are up, you make up the days when you're back," she added firmly. She wanted to enjoy his cooking every day. Shizune, listening, complained. "You're changing the terms. Before it was just a few meals." Tsunade waved her hand. "Before, Mu Yue would come over and cook himself. Now I haven't eaten it in a long time." Mu Yue cut the number sharply. 5 character cards. Dinners as often as before. "No," Tsunade folded her arms. When Mu Yue turned as if to leave, she panicked and used a quick body flicker to catch his arm. "Why are you so stingy? 7 is in, right?" she huffed. Mu Yue smiled without answering and kept walking. Tsunade realized one-handed restraint wouldn't hold him. "All right, 5 it is," she relented. "But tonight's dinner must be lavish. Roasted chicken, beggar's chicken, everything." Mu Yue agreed, then made a small request of his own. "From now on, call me Lord Mu Yue," he said, a hint of a smile. Tsunade scoffed and waved him off. "No, don't call me Lady Tsunade. You are Lord Mu Yue. From now on, call me Tsunade-chan." Tsunade looked back over her time with Mu Yue and laughed inwardly. She realized how easily she'd been played. She'd taught him medical ninjutsu and helped accept a disciple in Rin. She'd even set time to help refine his yang seal when she should have been relaxing. 3 months of meals suddenly felt too small. He owed her more. Still, the teasing promise to be called Tsunade-chan made her scowl, but not hard enough to refuse. Mu Yue created a shadow clone and sent it off to buy groceries, smiling faintly. Whatever the bargaining, he meant what he'd said. He admired Tsunade as a medical ninja. She'd simply be the one to pay for indulgent dinners and the occasional narcissistic title. He left the training ground with a plan for Asuma, a promotion track for Rin, and one more ally in Tsunade, plus a few scrolls from Danzo to study. The world was shifting, and Mu Yue navigated alliances and obligations with the quiet calm of someone who knew exactly what he wanted. 467. Uchiha returns to glory? After training one day, Shisui invited Obito to walk back to the Uchiha compound with him. On the way he asked, "Obito, are you going to the clan meeting at 8 tonight?" The Uchiha always sent notice in advance when they called a clan meeting. Shisui had gotten the notice the night before, so Obito should have too. The only requirement to attend was being a ninja. Genin, chuunin, jonin, any ninja could go. Civilians and academy students were not allowed. That was also why Shisui hadn't argued when he'd been called out at the previous meeting. He'd technically broken the rules. A clan meeting? Oh, I forgot. Elder Yashiro told me about it yesterday, Obito said, remembering. I don't really want to go. It sounds boring. I'd rather spend the time training. Obito had only been to one clan meeting before, and he'd found the older Uchiha full of self-importance and stuck in past glories. He planned to use his usual trick. When a class or meeting bored him, he'd let his mind wander so he wouldn't hear what he didn't want to hear. He figured he could do the same tonight. Shisui had expected that answer. The last meeting had left a bad taste in both their mouths. If Shisui hadn't cared about changing the clan, he probably wouldn't bother dealing with the elders who obsessed over the clan's former greatness and treated everything outside the Uchiha as unimportant. He believed that kind of thinking was extreme and wrong. The Uchiha were a part of Konoha, not above it. If you can, come with me, Shisui asked. He wasn't afraid to go alone. He wanted Obito there to lend weight. Alone, he'd be just one genius. Together, two geniuses would be noticed as a small faction. All right, I'll go with you. It's a little lonely by myself, Obito agreed easily. He liked keeping promises to friends. I'll come get you when it's time, Shisui smiled. They parted at the compound gates. Obito went straight home. Shisui stopped at the market for groceries. Since he lived alone and had just returned from the battlefield, he had nothing ready and needed to cook. His little house was quiet, the soft sound of his steps, the clatter of pots. A knock came at the door while he was preparing dinner. Shisui set down his utensils, untied his apron, and opened it curious. Who would be calling at this hour? He expected maybe Obito with some last-minute emergency. Instead, he found his uncle, Uchiha Shinhiro, standing on the threshold. "Uncle, you're back," Shisui greeted, surprised and pleased. "I just returned today, so I came to see you," Shinhiro replied with a smile. Since Shisui had lost his parents young, Shinhiro often checked on him. He'd heard that Shisui had earned the title Shisui the Body Flicker on the battlefield, and was both relieved and proud. At the same age, Shisui's grandfather Kagami had not accomplished nearly so much. "Have you eaten? I can make you some," Shinhiro asked. Shisui invited him in and said he was cooking already, not to trouble himself. "If you haven't eaten, I will try your cooking tonight," Shinhiro laughed. He accepted gladly. Shisui was no longer a child to be fussed over. He was a warrior capable of killing enemies on the field. Over dinner, Shisui told his uncle about some of the skirmishes on the East Bank battlefield. Previously, Shinhiro had been the one telling mission stories. Shisui wanted to share his own now. That was dangerous. To actually encounter the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, Shinhiro said after hearing the tale. The leaf paper had painted Konoha's ninjas as triumphant, but Shisui's account had been full of hairbreadth escapes and desperate efforts. If Lord Mu Yue hadn't arrived in time, Shisui and his squad might have died. Shinhiro admitted he could probably only defeat one of those swordsmen himself. Meeting teacher Mu Yue was truly fortunate, Shinhiro said approvingly. A good teacher offered more than training, guidance, strategies, and connections. Shinhiro thought Mu Yue, with such abilities, would become a high-ranking figure in Konoha someday. Shisui agreed inwardly. He could not imagine where he'd be without Mu Yue's influence. whether he'd have escaped the clan's extremist thinking, gained his current strength, or even been as content as he was now. They talked until the time for the clan meeting approached. "Uncle, are you going to tonight's meeting?" Shisui asked. "Yes. When I'm in Konoha, I attend. I need to watch the clan's atmosphere. We can't have another Uchiha Setsuna," Shinhiro replied. "I need to go call a friend first." "We made an agreement," Shisui said. "Then let's go now," Shinhiro said, and they set off to Obito's house. Shisui introduced his uncle. "This is my uncle, Uchiha Shinhiro." "Hello, Uncle Shinhiro," Obito greeted cheerfully. Before Shisui could finish, Shinhiro smiled at Obito. "Hello, Obito. I know you, our clan's great genius." I'm just an average genius," Obito replied, scratching the back of his head. He liked Shinhiro's frankness. The three chatted on the walk to Nanga Shrine. Obito even saw Uchiha Inaho in passing. At the shrine they sat on floor cushions. There were no strict seating rules except the clan head at the front. Uchiha Fugaku called for order. "Elder Shang-Ching, please begin," he said, indicating a serious-looking middle-aged shinobi in the front row. There were two kinds of clan meetings: regular monthly meetings and special meetings called by the head or an elder, or when many members demanded it. This was the second type. Elder Uchiha Shang-Ching had convened it. Shang-Ching stood and faced the assembled clan. "First and foremost today, I want to commend two clan members. They are the pride of our Uchiha clan," he announced with a smile. The assembled Uchiha murmured with curiosity. Some guessed Inaho, some doubted it. Others, who kept up with battlefield reports, looked at Shisui and Obito. Recently, the two of them had been in the leaf paper, and with many Uchiha serving in the police rather than at war, there were few powerful Uchiha on the battlefield. Attention naturally fell on Shisui and Obito. "These two are Uchiha Shisui and Uchiha Obito," Shang-Ching declared. They displayed the Uchiha clan's prowess on the Hidden Mist battlefield. Suikazan Fuki, one of the famed 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, was killed by Obito in the recent war. Surprised looks spread among those who hadn't followed the war closely. The 7 swordsmen were elite jonin. Even a single one was difficult to face. "Obito actually killed Suikazan Fuguki?" Inaho exclaimed, astonished. He'd been busy with work and training, and hadn't realized Obito had reached such a level. I didn't kill him alone. Kakashi and I teamed up to kill him," Obito corrected. He enjoyed a little recognition, but didn't want to take credit for others' desperate efforts. He and Kakashi had given everything to slay Fuguki. Shang-Ching nodded as though that settled it. "I believe it was through your efforts, Obito, that you and Kakashi Hatake together killed Suikazan Fuguki." Obito thought about saying Kakashi had led the fight and deserved equal credit, but decided it wasn't worth arguing. Shisui frowned. The official report had stated Kakashi personally killed Fuguki. Why did Shang-Ching emphasize Obito's role so much? It felt like an attempt to inflate Obito's share. Shang-Ching continued, "Now they have both become Konoha Jonin. Shisui even broke the record for youngest Jonin, the first ever 8-year-old Jonin for Konoha." He stood up and waved his fist. "This is the ninja of our Uchiha clan. It shows the Uchiha clan has never lacked geniuses. We only lack a stage, lack opportunities." Others applauded and chimed in. "Our Uchiha have always been the strongest ninja clan. That proves it. If the opportunity arises, our clan will surely return to the glory of the Sengoku period." The talk of returning to past glory made Shisui uneasy. He glanced at his uncle. Shinhiro's face was deeply furrowed, which reassured him. At least his uncle hadn't been swept up. Obito's expression had cooled too. Shang-Ching's Aise had begun promisingly, but now it felt like a prelude to the clan's old rhetoric. A rhetoric Shisui and Obito both distrusted. They had proved themselves on the battlefield. That should have been the end of it. Yet in the hall, the words turned into the familiar chant of Uchiha first, and both boys felt themselves pulled against the current. 468. When in doubt, look for Mu Yue. I propose we ask the third Hokage to grant the police force the right to take the initiative in attacking, rather than limiting us to internal village security. We should be able to mobilize ourselves and strike first. Let outsiders see the true power of the Uchiha. Elder Shang-Ching announced at the clan meeting. He was dissatisfied with the police force's current remit and believed the Uchiha deserved far greater authority. Uchiha Shang-Ching was convinced his idea was brilliant. If the Uchiha were allowed to eliminate enemies openly, the clan would gain fame and fortune, benefits for everyone. Fugaku's expression tightened. He had not expected Shang-Ching to be so radical. The right to take the initiative meant the police force could summon personnel at will, form a military force, and wage war. Fugaku knew Hiruzen would never agree. It would split the Hokage's authority. That's a sensible proposal. It's a waste to keep our Uchiha confined to village security, and Uchiha Jonin said immediately. The more enemies we kill, the safer Konoha will be, another added. We should have greater autonomy, freely add positions, and even demand more, some hawk-leaning Uchiha argued. War trains Shinobi. It improves strength. Inaho, who didn't dislike police work but found it too placid, added his support. With the right to initiate action, he could go fight outside the village anytime. Shinhiro sighed almost imperceptibly. The Hawk faction was rising again. Ever since the failed coup, the Hawks had been decimated, many core members arrested by Senju Tobirama, and Shinhiro had expected it would be decades before they recovered. He hadn't expected them to rally so quickly. I object. The third Hokage will absolutely not agree. This will only make Konoha's higher-ups more suspicious of us, Shisui said, standing up. Only 8 years old, he would have been lost in the crowd sitting, so he rose so everyone would know who had spoken. Shang-Ching's gaze narrowed when someone openly rejected his proposal. Seeing it was the very boy he had praised, Uchiha Shisui, his face cooled. He had just called Shisui the clan's pride, a genius, and now the boy was defying him. Shisui, you're still young. You don't understand some things. At gatherings like this, you should listen to your elders. Shang-Ching said, forcing a benevolent tone. He could not harshly rebuke Shisui. Having recently extolled him, it would be a contradiction. But he was annoyed, and he made a mental note not to rely on Shisui's support for Hawk ideas again. Obito seemed easier to sway, more pliable when Shang-Ching exaggerated his achievements. Shisui, by contrast, was blunt. One shouldn't speak about clan matters by age. I may be 8, but I'm a Jonin, just like Elder Shang-Ching, Shisui replied, clearly emphasizing his rank. Some Hawk members who had been ready to scold him fell silent. Many were only chuunin, lower in rank than Shisui. Although Shang-Ching had mentioned Shisui as the youngest Jonin, his small frame made it hard for others to picture him as such. In clan meetings, any clan member who is a ninja may speak, Fugaku said after a moment's thought, nodding. He was neither hawk nor dove. As clan head, he only supported what was best for the Uchiha. Shang-Ching's proposal was reckless. Presenting it to Hiruzen and the Konoha leadership would only arouse suspicion and bring no concrete benefit. Fugaku's words backed Shisui. Shang-Ching glanced at Fugaku, then at Shisui. I can't guarantee this will be approved, but even if it isn't, it won't be in vain. We must let Konoha's leaders know our demands. The Uchiha deserve treatment commensurate with our strength. Shisui bristled inwardly. Shang-Ching was dangerously persuasive. He framed the proposal as if it represented the whole clan, making any opposition sound like opposing the Uchiha itself. He made Hiruzen's likely refusal seem like an injustice. Even if the motion failed, Shang-Ching would still come away looking like a champion of the clan. As Shisui feared, many ninjas grew restless. Some who had been quiet began leaning toward Shang-Ching. Shisui's mind raced, remembering the history and political strategy Mu Yue had taught him. Combining that knowledge with the Uchiha's present reality, he found a way to respond. To neutralize the proposal, he needed to focus on 2 main points. The first was to convince the Uchiha ninjas that this proposal was simply infeasible. After leaving Mu Yue's house, Shisui went home to write out his rebuttal to Elder Shang-Ching's proposal, then made his way to Uchiha Fugaku's residence. The clan meeting was a week away. Shisui wanted to get everything in motion early to leave room for any unexpected complications. Shisui, is something the matter? Fugaku asked when he opened the door. It was nearly 10 at night. An unannounced visit at this hour was not for idle socializing. Uncle Fugaku, Elder Shang-Ching's proposal can't stand. I want to stop him at the clan meeting, Shisui said plainly. Based on his own observations and Mu Yue's analysis, Fugaku could be a crucial ally, so Shisui cut straight to the point. Fugaku replied cautiously, Elder Shang-Ching's idea does have serious flaws. It isn't very feasible. It's commendable that you want to act, Shisui, but this isn't something you must involve yourself in yet. What you should focus on now is training and getting stronger. Then you can serve the Uchiha properly. Fugaku didn't want Shisui drawn into the factional struggle between the Doves and the Hawks. Shisui was a prodigy. Fugaku thought the boy should concentrate on cultivating his abilities first and repay the clan later, rather than becoming entangled in internal politics. "Please hear me out," Shisui said calmly, showing no arrogance despite Fugaku's reservations. Fugaku studied his composed expression and found himself thinking of Uchiha Kagami. A strange feeling rose in him, and he fell silent, choosing to listen. Even if Shisui's plan failed, it would cost him only a few minutes to be convinced, no great loss. Shisui outlined the first step. "I can't yet match Elder Sheng Qing's status, but we Uchiha respect strength. I want to defeat him in a fair fight and earn a status equal to his." "You intend to challenge Elder Sheng Qing?" Fugaku shook his head slightly. On paper it seemed unlikely. Elder Sheng Qing was a veteran jonin and a 3-tomo Sharingan user. "Please let me finish." Shisui anticipated Fugaku's doubts. He knew Sheng Qing's experience far outmatched his, and the proposal to defeat him sounded improbable. But after Mu Yue had helped refine the plan, Shisui was confident his greatest risk was failing to beat Sheng Qing. "If I, a junior, challenge Elder Sheng Qing and lose, my reputation won't suffer greatly. But if Sheng Qing loses to me, he'll lose face. That dynamic helps my cause. I need your help, Uncle Fugaku." Fugaku fell quiet. Shisui explained the martial arts tournament strategy Mu Yue had devised. Fugaku was taken aback by the depth of Shisui's thinking, how the loss of face would escalate internal conflicts, how a tournament could force a resolution. The boy's tactical awareness was beyond what Fugaku expected of someone his age. He began to reconsider the plan's feasibility. "When the preliminaries are done, I will formally refute Elder Sheng Qing at the clan meeting," Shisui added, handing Fugaku a packet of pre-written documents. Fugaku read them, his expression shifting. If Shisui lived long enough, Fugaku thought, the Uchiha might truly revive their old glories. Today's meeting affected him more deeply than any battlefield report about the boy. Across the ninja world, there were always geniuses. What made Shisui remarkable now was not only his combat achievements, but the maturity of his thought. "I've finished," Shisui said, calm and steady. "If you support the clan as a whole, helping me is the same as helping the Uchiha." Fugaku cleared his throat. "I apologize for my earlier interruption. You've clearly thought this through and aren't acting on a whim." He folded the papers and said a decision. "You don't need to worry. From now on, focus on preparing for the battle." Fugaku would use his authority as clan head to make the tournament happen. He added after a moment, "Don't pressure yourself too much. If you lose, I have a contingency plan." Shisui's jaw tightened. "I'll win." Fugaku only nodded. If the boy said it, further consolation would be needless. The next day, Fugaku summoned the clan's high-R, Anking members and proposed the martial arts tournament. The Uchiha were a martial people. Despite the suddenness of the proposal, none of the elders objected. Sheng Qing himself was an enthusiastic supporter, even offering to guide contestants if others were too busy, though not surprisingly, the other elders balked at letting him take sole control. "If I demonstrate both strength and magnanimity, more clan members will back me," Sheng Qing thought, scheming. Fugaku and Shisui were already moving on their own plans. Shisui spent the remaining days taking special training from Mu Yue, making a last push for the plan. Raw strength couldn't be boosted dramatically in a few days unless one had mastered the transparent world, the pinnacle of breathing technique, a skill only Kakashi among Mu Yue's students had achieved. Instead, Shisui worked to improve his overall combat ability. Each day he sparred Mu Yue's main body, then rested and healed. He was killed and revived repeatedly, teleported into oblivion by consecutive flying thunder god strikes, crushed by high-power ninjutsu, pounded by taijutsu. If Mu Yue hadn't used transformation to become Tsunade for the healing, Shisui would have borne permanent scars. The relentless regimen built Shisui's resilience. The day before the tournament, Shisui even challenged Metkai. He lost, but felt the match had pushed him forward. "Thank you for all your trouble, Teacher Mu Yue," Shisui said sincerely. The training had taxed Mu Yue as much as it had Shisui. The master had to control his strength precisely, applying pressure fierce enough to threaten but not to kill. That fine control demanded extra mental effort. "It's no trouble to a teacher teaching a pupil," Mu Yue replied with a smile, then produced an iron spoon from his pouch and handed it to Shisui. "This is a ninja tool that enhances yin release ninjutsu. Inject chakra into it. The more chakra, the stronger the amplification. Use it wisely in battle." It turned out that the spoon was the reward Mu Yue had drawn when Shisui was promoted to Jonin. He'd held back earlier because other disciples received only an egg, and Mu Yue felt it would look odd to single Shisui out then. Shisui examined the bent spoon. It looked crude, but provided a clean amplification. It didn't even need to be held, just carried so chakra could be infused into it. Shisui swore not to waste Mu Yue's teaching. The desire to win sharpened. At that moment, the reward system registered. You received the bent spoon. Because of the disciples' deep gratitude, the reward was a critical hit, also granted. Earth Release, Earth Flow Divide Mastery Level. Mu Yue nodded to himself. Earth Flow Divide was a powerful earth release, capable of restraining massive creatures like tailed beasts and potent offensively against people. On the tournament day, Fugaku and the elders stood on the training ground before the assembled participants. For a shinobi, strength is everything. Strength helps you overcome all trials, Fugaku said plainly. Today we hold the first Uchiha martial arts tournament. Matches will be determined by lottery. The top 8 will receive ranking rewards. The top 4 will have the opportunity to receive guidance from an elder immediately. Whether you seek strength or the rewards, fight with everything you have. He kept his remarks brief. Uchiha were not ones for long speeches, and the assembled clan responded with fierce enthusiasm. The youngest and shortest among the competitors, Shisui, drew the most attention. Nobody underestimated him. He was one of the few jonin competing and had a record of fighting the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. "If I beat Shisui, I'll take the tournament. No one else will be able to challenge me," Uchiha Yue thought, scanning the field. Although there were several jonin in the clan, many were past their prime and wouldn't fight in a tournament for guidance. Only 3 jonin actually entered. Most competitors were chuunin. Genin were scarce. Yue knew the other jonin and had already beaten one of them, a 4, so he considered Shisui his only real threat. The lottery finished quickly and the tournament began. Number 1, Uchiha Shisui versus Uchiha Inaho, the referee announced. Inaho's face fell. He'd hoped to win a couple of matches, but now he'd drawn Shisui in the first round. Their gap was too wide. Inaho had no realistic chance. "Bad luck, Inaho," a nearby clan member murmured. "If you'd avoided the jonin, you could have fought for a while." Inaho forced a smile. "Shisui, let me see the true power of an Uchiha genius," he said, intending to test his improved skill against the best. Shisui nodded. For the future he aimed for, he had to win decisively. "Begin." Shisui gathered chakra in his eyes. A deep crimson flared, and the 3-tomo pattern appeared. He infused chakra into the bent spoon to amplify his yin release and met Inaho's gaze. Crimson flooded Inaho's vision and expanded until he collapsed into unconsciousness. When he regained his senses, he was on the ground. Shisui stood over him, kunai in hand. Silence fell over the arena. Every spectator, from the elders to the other contestants, was utterly still. It was expected that Shisui would win. No one expected him to put Inaho down with a single glance. How is Shisui's genjutsu so strong? He's known for fire release and the body flicker, murmurs ran through the crowd. Many had seen Shisui win during the chuunin exams with blazing fire release and lightning movement. Genjutsu had never seemed like his signature. "He's monstrous," Yue thought, sweating. He held only a 2-tomoe Sharingan, nowhere near enough to instantly take someone down like that. He feared he might lose his shot at first place. "Uchiha Shisui wins," the referee declared. The arena buzzed with astonishment and a new, wary respect for the boy whose plan was now visibly in motion. "I, Shisui, win." Uchiha Inaho barely registered the referee's announcement before the words reached him. The match had ended so suddenly, he was still a little stunned. In his head, Shisui quietly apologized to him. Normally, even against strangers, Shisui would hold back. He wouldn't crush someone utterly. But not this time. This time, Shisui wanted every member of the Uchiha to know. He, Uchiha Shisui, was fearsomely strong, stronger than many Uchiha jonin. Uchiha Fugaku's eyes flickered with surprise. He hadn't expected such a display. Shisui's earlier performance had been enough to defeat most of the clan and practically guarantee first place in the martial arts tournament. Elder Shangqing, it looks like Shisui will almost certainly take first place, an elder from the Dove faction chuckled. These youngsters are extraordinary. I'd be under a lot of pressure trying to guide them. The guides for the winners had been decided by lot before the tournament began, Groups 1 and 4 and Groups 2 and 3. Uchiha Fugaku, by his manipulation, had arranged for Uchiha Shangqing to oversee the first and fourth groups. Guiding the first-place winner could be prestigious if the victor was not so overwhelmingly powerful that they were impossible to instruct. Shangqing's expression showed he was thinking precisely that. Shisui truly is outstanding, Shangqing admitted, even if he didn't particularly like the boy. But with my years of cultivation, I believe I can still teach him something. He had a 3-tomoe Sharingan, trained over decades. Shisui's trick, defeating Inaho instantly with genjutsu, would not work on him. Shangqing was confident his experience would see him through. If he won, he could deliver some lofty guidance and call it a good lesson. As the tournament progressed, one Uchiha after another fell. Shisui's suppressive power was terrifying. Against anyone, he would simply open his 3-tomoe Sharingan and use genjutsu. They collapsed instantly. Some tried to fight by lowering their heads or closing their eyes, but unless one trained specifically for that tactic, it cost them too much in combat effectiveness. They still lost to Shisui. Finals: Uchiha Shisui versus Uchiha Yue. Yue stepped into the ring with a steadying breath. He had accepted that he was outmatched and simply wanted to lose without looking pathetic. Shisui strolled to the opposite side, composed. He'd only been warming up. His real aim was the guidance match against Elder Shangqing. Begin! As the referee called the match, Yue flashed his 2-tomoe Sharingan. He dared not be overconfident. If he delayed, he might fall prey to Shisui's genjutsu like the others. What no one expected happened. Shisui opened his 3-tomoe Sharingan and met Yue's gaze. For a moment they locked eyes, and an unending tide of blood rushed behind Yue's eyelids. You lose. By the time Yue came to, Shisui was already at his side, a kunai pressed against his throat. How is this possible? Yue's heart hammered. He was no genin, he was a jonin with a 2-tomoe Sharingan. How could one glance defeat him? Silence fell over the arena. The shiver that ran through the clan was palpable. Has Shisui really reached this level? He beat brother Yue, a jonin, with one look, Uchiha Inaho murmured, shaken to the core. If this had been a real fight, Yue would have been killed. This can't be right. His genjutsu, his dojutsu shouldn't be this strong, Shangqing said in puzzlement. Defeating a chuunin instantly was one thing, but taking down a Sharingan jonin in a single exchange was excessive. Even after decades of training, Shangqing hadn't achieved anything like it. If the opponent lacked a Sharingan, such instant defeat might be possible. But among Uchiha, the Sharingan conferred strong resistance to genjutsu. He must be stronger than Obito, Fugaku thought, astonished. He had assumed he would no longer be surprised by Shisui, yet the boy kept producing new shocks. Shisui watched the stunned faces around him with quiet satisfaction. The truth was his genjutsu, alone, was not sufficient to instantly fell a Sharingan jonin, but he had Mu Yue's ninja tool. Throughout the tournament, Shisui had exploited the match structure, periodically injecting chakra into the curved spoon during breaks to strengthen his yin release and continuously restore his state. Before the finals, he'd poured most of his chakra into the spoon, producing the terrifying effect that had felled Yue in a single look. If he had fought normally, defeating Yue would have taken less chakra than he'd expended boosting the tool. But Shisui wanted the shock of a decisive, instant blow, and he took it. After the winner was decided, they did not immediately begin guidance matches. Officials still scored and ranked 3rd and 4th places, then spoke about learning from the top 4, and only then did the guidance matches begin. This delay suited Shisui. It gave him the perfect window to further enhance the curved spoon. If this had been an internal disciple bout, he would never have used such a trick. But if his opponent was an elder who'd ever harmed the clan for personal gain, Shisui had no qualms about employing it. Elder Shangqing, please guide me, Shisui said politely. With your strength, I can't teach you much, Shangqing answered cautiously. I can only share some experiences from my years of training. He was still unsettled by Shisui's performances. When the guidance match finally began, every Uchiha present watched the empty ring, eager for the clash. On one side stood Shisui, now famous as the body flicker. On the other, an elder with status and authority. The stakes and spectacle promised excitement. I think this will be a good fight. Shisui beat Yue with one genjutsu. Even if Elder Shengqing wins, it won't be easy. Hard to say. Elder Shengqing is a seasoned jonin. Shisui's genjutsu won't work on him. If his main ability is genjutsu, he could struggle. Most of the clan favored Shengqing. Genius meant little until one grew into a truly powerful individual, and Shengqing had that reputation among Uchiha Jonin. Start! Shengqing gathered chakra in his eyes and activated his 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Shisui responded in kind, but instead of beginning with genjutsu, he used the body flicker technique and charged. Shengqing didn't hesitate. He exploded chakra into his legs and rushed forward too. If Shisui relied only on genjutsu, it would show his combat level was limited. Both men struck and collided in a blur. After their initial exchanges, both were surprised. Shengqing's taijutsu was not weak. Shisui discovered his opponent moved and struck with refined skill. Shengqing, in turn, was astonished at Shisui's physical prowess. He had expected a genius in genjutsu and fire release, not such superior body technique and physique. He didn't know Shisui's breathing technique had long reached the constant state, constantly honing and enhancing the boy's body. The only conclusion Shengqing could reach was that Shisui's talent was monstrous. Realizing his original plan wouldn't work, Shengqing shifted to a more measured rhythm and opened his fire release. Fire release, great fireball technique. Both men formed hand signs and exhaled huge fireballs. The 2 blazing spheres collided with a deafening roar and erupted into a conflagration that scorched the earth. The Uchiha watching flinched at the light. A nature clash of the same element was the best way to measure one's affinity and skill. Shengqing's expression tightened. Shisui's fire release might be on par with his own. In quick succession, Shengqing followed with a more complex flame jutsu. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Shisui mirrored him with the same technique. Like a mirror, he nullified Shengqing's every incantation. Sweat beaded at Shengqing's brow. This sparring match was becoming embarrassing. If it continued like this, the elder would look bad. But Shengqing kept his calm. The more tense the exchange, the more he needed to be precise. He thought hard about finding a weakness. Yue is a child. No matter how talented, his chakra and stamina must be inferior. The thought took hold. Exhaust the boy, and the match would be his. It was uncomfortable to rely on attrition against a child, but better to win honorably than to be humiliated. Shengqing redoubled his efforts, all-out ninjutsu, carefully observing with his Sharingan. As the fight intensified, Shisui's condition began to waver, chakra and stamina drained. Shengqing pressed harder, believing victory within reach. Fire release, great dragon fire technique. Shengqing formed seals and sent a sinuous dragon of flame toward Shisui, hoping to force distance and collapse the boy's reserves. But instead of forming his own seals to block the attack, Shisui sprinted straight through the dragon. Shengqing froze for a heartbeat. Everyone's pupils constricted. Fugaku even rose from his seat. Then a dull thud split the air. Shengqing was thrown backward like a kite with a snapped string, slamming to the ground hard. A kunai skittered beside him. Shisui stood where he'd struck, patting the ashes from his clothes and letting out a quiet breath. He hadn't managed to cover his whole body with armed color hockey. His chakra had been insufficient, so only parts of him were protected. Luckily, the great dragonfire's range was narrow, otherwise he wouldn't have dared the move. From the start, Shisui had deliberately led Shengqing into a war of attrition to lull the elder into overconfidence, then capitalized on the opening with a surprise finishing blow enhanced by the curved spoon. If he had tried to win purely with fire release and genjutsu, it would have been dicey. The spoon's enhancement had strengthened his armed color hockey beyond its normal state, enabling this audacious tactic. Shisui, are you all right? Shall I take you to Konoha Hospital? Fugaku rushed forward with concern. Though he didn't understand the technique Shisui had used, it was clear Shisui hadn't fully blocked the earlier dragon. Uncle Fugaku, I'm fine. Elder Shang-Ching is the one who's worse off, Shisui replied, shaking his head. He'd held nothing back in that single decisive strike. Fugaku checked Shang-Ching and found him unconscious with several broken bones, painful but survivable. Fugaku decided the unconsciousness was almost a relief. Awake, Shang-Ching would have been more humiliated in front of the clan. 2 Uchiha were sent to carry him away. The embarrassed referee had no choice but to declare the match over. Shisui walked toward the watching crowd. Every gaze on him was complex. Admiration, shock, confusion, envy. In that moment, Shisui rose in the eyes of the Uchiha beyond mere genius. Even an elder lost to him. My loss doesn't look so bad, Yue said to himself, feeling lighter. Seeing Shang-Ching defeated balanced his own defeat. It wasn't that he was weak. Shisui was simply beyond strong. The tournament continued. Another elder took the remaining guidance assignments, while Shang-Ching's slot was delayed because of his collapse. That evening, at Nanga Shrine, the Uchiha clan meeting started on time. Shisui, as before, brought Obito along. Though the tournament had made him known within the clan, he had no reason not to use Obito's influence. Shang-Ching attended too, recovering but still injured. Shisui could tell by his movements. Demanding the right to take initiative in attacks carries great meaning for the police force and our Uchiha clan, Shang-Ching said bluntly, seated beside Fugaku. If we succeed, the Uchiha will be able to. Elder Shang-Ching, what if this proposal is doomed to fail? Shisui stood and interrupted. Many in the room watched silently. Shisui had defeated the elder and made a name for himself at 8 years old. He had a right to question the plan. Shang-Ching's face darkened. I've said before, I can't guarantee success. Even reasonable demands may be denied. The final decision rests with the Hokage and the Konoha leadership. You're very strong, but you spend almost all your time cultivating, Shang-Ching advised, in a tone meant to be full. For political matters you need more learning. Shisui smiled faintly. He had come prepared. He distributed materials he'd compiled to everyone present, including the elder. As Shang-Ching scanned the pages, his face hardened. His eyes flicked between Fugaku and the other elders, searching for who had arranged this for Shisui. An 8-year-old could not possibly have organized such a comprehensive dossier on his own. Many others flipped through the papers. Shisui had laid out, point by point, what the right to take initiative in attacks meant, what powers it involved, what the division of responsibilities would look like, what suspicions the clan would face for proposing it, and even historical precedents and consequences. Shisui moved beside Fugaku and explained everything without looking at notes. Calm and precise, he answered every question. He concluded coldly, this proposal is unreasonable. It's not a right a ninja clan should demand, and it would undermine the Hokage's authority. Its chance of passing is essentially 0. It will only make Konoha fear us more. Fugaku looked at him with approval. He had known the issue's sensitivity, but could not have broken it down as clearly as Shisui. Some of the clan needed ideas delivered bluntly and sequentially. Shisui had done exactly that. Shang-Ching stood and bowed to the clan. I didn't think enough. I missed many points. I was wrong. My apologies. Others reassured him. Elder Shang-Ching, you meant well for the clan. You just missed something. Shang-Ching accepted their sympathy, returned to his seat, and reflected. Shisui watched without expression. The elder's tactic of retreating to advance had been solid, but Shisui had achieved his goal. He now had a voice in the Uchiha. Meanwhile, in Mu Yue's circle, the panel finally received news of Shisui's life mission settlement. Chapter 471, Metkai Pokemon Hatching. Disciple Uchiha Shisui's strength increases, his reputation rises, and his influence within the clan grows, taking a small step toward resolving the conflict between the Uchiha clan and Konoha. Progress Reward, Chakrath 1000, Bloodline Enhancement Scroll, Nirvana Temple Technique, Proficient. Because both were Uchiha clan shinobi and their circumstances overlapped, Shisui's progress reward looked a lot like the one Obito had received for his life mission, only the Proficient Fire release was replaced by Proficient Genjutsu. Mu Yue had a faint recollection of the Nirvana Temple technique. In Konoha's original chuunin exams, Yakushi Kabuto had used a similar ninjutsu to put many Konoha shinobi to sleep. It was a broad area group genjutsu. The Nirvana Temple technique's range was wide, but it had a drawback. Any shinobi reasonably skilled in genjutsu sometimes even a genin, could break it. It was typical of ninjutsu. They usually excelled in one thing and compromised elsewhere. Mu Yue turned his attention to the bloodline enhancement scroll. That was a good reward. When he'd enhanced his Byakugan last time, not only did its mundane functions improve, it also gained the ability to emit subtle, invisible shockwaves. It hadn't dramatically raised his combat power, but it proved the Byakugan was evolving beyond an ordinary Hyuga eye. A normal Hyuga Byakugan, however pure, only offered enhanced vision and telescopic sight. Mu Yue clicked the bloodline enhancement scroll. The only available option was still Byakugan. He selected it and confirmed. He then breathed slowly to enter the transparent world, feeling for the changes moving through his body. First, his physical strength rose, slightly but noticeably. He judged it roughly equivalent to a month of training in the rock-breathing constant state. The increase in chakra was very clear. The panel displayed an explicit gain of 1,500 chakra points. Strength and chakra pool weren't his only concerns, but the chakra recovery speed had been a long-time problem. Since most of his chakra had been raised directly by the system, his recovery rate never matched his total reserve. For a long time, Mu Yue had Kaja-level chakra volume, but the recovery speed of an ordinary jonin. That imbalance was one reason he researched the Yang Seal. A large reserve could make the slow recovery less crippling. For a cure, though, he had no perfect answer. He could keep pushing his body with breathing techniques, or accept risky biological modifications. Transplanting Hashirama cells, Orochimaru's specialty, could fix the issue, but Mu Yue preferred not to put himself in Orochimaru's hands. Orochimaru's obsession with immortality and his unfinished experiments made any transplant extremely dangerous. With the system's cheat on his side, there was no reason for Mu Yue to gamble his life. He focused chakra into his eyes and activated his Byakugan to test for new abilities. After a thorough check, he found only an increase in observation range this time, no new tricks like before. He deactivated the Byakugan, looked at the panel again, and opened Shisui's life mission. Name, life mission, Uchiha Clan. Main goal, eliminate the conflict between the Uchiha Clan and Konoha, and integrate the Uchiha Clan into Konoha. Mission progress, 13.6%. Shisui had been the earliest disciple to trigger a life mission, but because his mission was delicate, he'd had the fewest progress settlements, only one so far. Obito had the most settlements, with 3. Metkai and Kakashi had 2 each, though Guy was close to 30% and would soon have a third. Nagato hadn't activated his mission yet. He'd been taken on as a disciple later. South Border Forest. Kakashi was watching the brown-furred puppy he'd recently hatched, thinking about training it. The nin beast that hatched from Mu Yue's egg had been growing much faster than normal animals. Rockruff had only been out for a few days and could already run on its own, with energy and stamina far beyond a newborn puppy. Kashi had decided to train with Rockruff. Mu Yue had said the pup had great potential and would be extremely helpful if nurtured carefully. Rockruff, you'll run with me later. Don't stop until I tell you to. Keep going until you're exhausted. Kakashi squatted and stroked the pup's head. He'd named it for the stones around its neck. Whether beast or human, physical strength mattered. Training the body wasn't everything, but it was never wrong. Woof! Rockruff bobbed its head and rubbed against Kakashi's palm. Don't get lost, Kakashi warned one last time, then took off. Over the time he'd spent with the pup, Kakashi had found Rockruff surprisingly intelligent. It understood and followed most commands. Rockruff fell in beside him and kept pace. Kakashi gradually accelerated to test the pup's top speed until Rockruff could barely follow. She looks so cute when she's working so hard, Rin Nohara said, watching Rockruff chase after Kakashi while she rested from special training. Rin was pushing herself to reach Jonin level, training to the limit, resting, and training again. Rin, are you talking about Kakashi or that white-furred dog? Obito, who was nearby, couldn't help ask. It was an important question to him. Don't you think little Rockruff is adorable, those 4 little legs running hard to keep up, and that big white tail wagging? Rin said, puzzled. She wouldn't use cute about Kakashi. Words like calm or handsome fit him better. It's fine, but I still prefer Big Yellow from my clan, Obito muttered, putting Rockruff down slightly. He felt comforted and also disparaged the pup. You just train with your nin beast. I'll beat you in the next internal battle, he told himself. Obito suspected he might not even need his own nin beast for that match. He'd received his egg later than Shisui, and Shisui hadn't hatched his yet either. Even if his egg hatched before the internal battle, a newborn creature wouldn't have meaningful combat power. Still, Obito was eager to hatch his egg. As Kakashi and Rockruff ran past Rin and Obito, Rockruff suddenly bristled at someone speaking ill of it. It head-butted Obito in a flash. Caught off guard, Obito was knocked to the ground. "Woof!" Rockruff barked triumphantly, then bolted back to Kakashi. "Kakashi, your dog is really a dog!" Obito spluttered as he climbed to his feet, cheeks flaming. He almost wanted to enter flame-breathing chakra mode and take Rockruff down then and there. Rin stifled a laugh and dusted him off. Little Rockruff was just born. She doesn't understand things yet. "Don't be angry, Obito," Rin said sympathetically. Hearing Rin defend Rockruff, Obito's face reddened even more. In the quiet of his mind, he issued a silent, dramatic warning. It felt like his position in Rin's heart had just dropped below that of a little white puppy. "It's a dog, so of course it acts like a dog," Kakashi called back, smiling faintly as they ran. "Woof," Rockruff barked happily. Obito watched them disappear and felt like gnawing something. He mentally cursed them both. "You arrogant, white-furred pup, when my egg hatches, I'll show you." He clutched his own egg tightly. He couldn't wait another moment. He wanted the day of hatching to come now. "Teacher Chen, is there any way to make this egg hatch faster?" he asked Mu Yue. The omnipotent Mu Yue, Teacher Chen, seemed like the one person who should have an answer. "Keeping it with you more should help," Mu Yue replied after a moment. The Pokemon eggs were bound to their recipients. Only the egg's owner could hatch it. Leaving it with Mu Yue would change nothing. "Really? I see Guy carrying his egg during training every day, and it hasn't hatched yet," Obito said, glancing at Metkai, who was doing one-handed push-ups while holding an egg. At that instant, a fierce white light wrapped around Metkai. Obito stared. The same special effect had accompanied Rockruff's birth. "What's going on? Am I turning into Kakashi?" Obito thought, bewildered. In his mind, only Kakashi would behave like this. He mentally added another strike against Kakashi. It must be Kakashi's influence. Damn Kakashi! But he kept watching the white light. What kind of ninbeast would Guy get? Metkai froze mid-exercise, holding his egg and waiting for the light to fade. Kakashi, noticing the anomaly while running nearby, sprinted back and watched as well. "There's white light too. Could these eggs Teacher Chen prepared have come from a secret group of ninbeasts?" Kakashi wondered. After returning to Konoha, he had checked the old texts in the library and found no record of egg-laying dogs or creatures like Rockruff. He trusted Mu Yue and suspected these beasts came from some hidden habitat no one had documented. When the light finally cleared, a small black-blue puppy sat before them. Another egg-laying dog. "Does that mean all the ninbeast eggs are canines?" Kakashi said, thoughtful. He guessed Mu Yue might have stumbled on a hidden canine colony, which was why he had those eggs. Obito frowned. "It looks even weaker than Kakashi's dog," he muttered. The newly hatched Riolu was thin and fragile-looking, so light he fancied a flick might knock it out. "I hope mine isn't like that. I want a big, powerful dog," Obito thought as he hugged his egg tighter. He didn't like skinny pups. He wanted something strong and impressive. He even felt, without reason, that Riolu gave him a disdainful look. Metkai, on the other hand, beamed and lifted Riolu with gusto. "It looks like it has great potential for effort," he declared with a wide grin. Guy wasn't concerned by small size. He had once been weak and built himself through relentless training. Whatever hatched, Metkai would train with it and grow together. Riolu sensed that pure, earnest spirit, and its red eyes brightened. It barked happily, eager to train and become stronger with Guy. "Riolu," it said cheerfully. Mu Yue watched and thought Riolu would suit Guy well. The Lucario line wasn't only known for aura-sensing techniques, it had several potent offensive moves and even healing abilities, useful for someone like Metkai, who often teamed with Ebisu and others rather than a medic 9. Author's note and solicitations removed. 472, Yang Breath Chakra Pattern. Although some are scrawny, at least I prepared early. Metkai set Riolu down and, as if from nowhere, produced a pile of green jumpsuits. He picked the smallest one, held it up to Riolu, and the little nin beast fit perfectly. Obito watched Riolu stand on 2 legs and couldn't help himself. "Why are your nin beasts weirder than the last? Why does this one stand like a person?" he complained. "And Guy, your obsession with green jumpsuits is getting out of hand. Do even your 9 beasts have to wear them?" "It's not an obsession. This outfit is perfect for training in combat," Metkai replied, giving Obito a thumbs up. "Obito, you should try one too. Once you wear it, you'll love it." He reached for a jumpsuit the size of Obito's, offering it like a salesman. Obito shook his head so vigorously it sounded like a rattle. He refused flatly. Metkai, truly convinced of his fashion's virtue, persisted casually. In his mind, the green jumpsuit was something Konoha, maybe the entire ninja world, should adopt. "Guy, go find Kakashi," Obito said, saving himself by dragging Kakashi into it. "He wears a green vest every day. Maybe he'd like your green too." Kakashi, who did in fact wear the standard Konoha vest, interjected before Guy could finish. "I once had my fortune told at a temple," he said. "The master said my fate is countered by green. If I wear green, I might run into life-threatening misfortune." "Well, then there's nothing to be done," Metkai said, stroking his chin and finally letting the subject drop. Obito stared. Kakashi was clearly making it up, but Guy believed him. If Kakashi truly were cursed by green, Obito thought, it was as if he were Uchiha Madara nursing a grudge against wood release. Better to throw Kakashi under the bus than be coerced into that color. Since Riolu had just hatched, Metkai didn't push him into serious drills. He strapped the little creature onto his back and resumed one-finger push-ups. Riolu felt the earnestness of Guy's training spirit and wanted to join in, but his newborn clumsiness made him fall over constantly. Metkai was quick, though, always catching him before he could get hurt. "That's so nice. It's really heartwarming," Rin Nohara exclaimed. Even though Riolu had just been born, the way Riolu and Metkai interacted gave Rin a real sense of family. "Rin, don't be jealous. We'll have that someday too," Obito declared. He swore that if he ever got a nin beast egg, he would never let it out of his hands until it hatched. After a day of training, Mu Yue went grocery shopping as usual and stopped by Tsunade's house to cook dinner. They chatted afterward about refining the yang seal, then Mu Yue politely declined Tsunade's offer for a game of Ninja Killer and went home to study sealing techniques and practice developing yang release breathing. Mu Yue had already experimented with several breathing techniques. He possessed 2 at perfect level and 2 at mastery level. When he formally practiced yang release breathing, his progress was astonishingly fast. He grasped the basics instantly, became proficient in a day, and within 2 weeks, his yang release breathing proficiency reached 2,400, only 600 points short of mastery, which would allow him to enter the yang release breathing chakra mode. "Still, this isn't the yang release breathing I imagined," Mu Yue said, slightly rueful. Even mastering it wouldn't let him fuse it with flame breathing to create sun breathing. The yang release breathing he had wanted should have been able to combine with a complementary chakra nature and its corresponding breathing technique, stacking with fire release flame breathing to form a stronger fire technique. The version he had developed, however, simply enhanced yang release. The chakra mode enabled healing without hand signs and could even allow temporary bodily expansion, similar to the Akimichi clan's partial expansion jutsu. It had useful effects, strengthening yang release while carrying traits akin to Akimichi's secrets and mitotic regeneration, but it was far from the synthesis he had envisioned. He wondered if he had gone slightly off course. Around 9:30 that night, there was a sudden knock. Mu Yue set down the manuscript he was studying, activated his Byakugan, and glanced toward the door. It was Orochimaru. What is he doing here at this hour? Mu Yue wondered as he headed downstairs. Since returning to Konoha, he hadn't seen Orochimaru often. The snake-like ninja had seemed busy. He opened the door with a mild surprise. "Orochimaru, please come in." "Lord Mu Yue, forgive the intrusion." Orochimaru smiled faintly and followed him into the house. Mu Yue led him to the living room, poured 2 cups of tea, and set one before Orochimaru. "Since returning to Konoha, there have been too many trivial matters," Orochimaru said as he took a sip. "We haven't been able to converse like we did on the battlefield. After all, Orochimaru is placed in many important roles. Konoha needs him in many places, Mu Yue replied with a chuckle. He suspected Orochimaru had come with a purpose beyond pleasantries. The ninja world is chaotic right now, Orochimaru said, putting down the cup. Kumogakure and Tsunagakure are fighting fiercely. I want to use this opportunity to strike a heavy blow at Kumogakure so Konoha's pressure can be relieved. Mu Yue listened. Orochimaru explained the tense situation. Hidden Mist had been repelled, but showed no desire to sign a lasting peace, and war could break out again once either side dealt with its current troubles. Orochimaru argued that, rather than wait for Hidden Mist to recover and attack them later, Konoha should first ease pressure from the other battlefronts, specifically Kumogakure. If they could weaken Kumogakure enough, Hidden Mist would be less likely to risk another invasion. The implication was obvious. Do you want me to join you on that front? Mu Yue thought. Orochimaru was talking strategy late at night because he wanted to recruit Mu Yue. Orochimaru, your foresight is admirable, Mu Yue said, keeping his tone neutral. The plan was clever, but Mu Yue didn't want to go. The Kumogakure front was far more dangerous than the Mist battlefield. Kumogakure was stronger, and the Third Raikage was recklessly relentless. In a major engagement, the Raikage might appear. Even if Mu Yue could break his defense with stacked perfect-level armed color haki and breathing techniques, battles weren't one-on-one affairs. Mu Yue still remembered how strange the events had been at the Mist. Konoha had only survived because of him, an unexpected variable. He could protect himself with Flying Thunder God, but he couldn't be selfish with his disciples' lives. His students had just broken through to a new stage. He couldn't leave them now. Even if Hiruzen Sarutobi wanted him at the front, Mu Yue would find a way to avoid it. He would certainly not go at Orochimaru's invitation. With a look of regret, Mu Yue said, Orochimaru, as much as I'd like to accomplish something with you, I genuinely cannot spare the time at the moment. Orochimaru's face didn't show annoyance. He smiled apologetically. I didn't consider your situation properly, Lord Mu Yue, he said, and then he lingered, discussing wider world affairs for a little while before taking his leave. As Orochimaru left Mu Yue's house, his eyes flashed coldly. Danzo Shimura was certain to notice Orochimaru's movements. Normally, if Orochimaru wanted Mu Yue to join him, he would have to go through Danzo. Mu Yue was one of Danzo's subordinates. Mu Yue's previous cooperation with Orochimaru had also been arranged through Danzo. So why had Orochimaru approached Mu Yue directly? Orochimaru had been probing. If Mu Yue agreed without consulting Danzo, it would show he was willing to abandon Danzo and side with Orochimaru. If he refused, it would indicate Mu Yue remained loyal to Root. Orochimaru didn't want Danzo to hold too much power. An overly powerful Danzo would upset the balance in their uneasy relationship. Orochimaru's discreet inquiries about Mu Yue didn't go unnoticed. Danzo felt a chill and his informants reported Orochimaru had contacted Mu Yue several times without Danzo's knowledge. Well, Orochimaru, so you've come to poach my best creation, Danzo said angrily. He had fought to help Orochimaru gain influence, even arguing with Hiruzen Sarutobi to ensure Mu Yue supported Orochimaru on the battlefield. And now, before Orochimaru had even secured more power, he was trying to steal Danzo's most perfect agent. If it weren't for the mutual dirty secrets that bound them, Danzo would have reprimanded Orochimaru severely. But they were collaborators, effectively equals. Still, Danzo didn't trust Orochimaru, and he investigated Mu Yue thoroughly to be sure. When he found that Mu Yue had never actively sought out Orochimaru and had turned Orochimaru down, Danzo finally relaxed. Mu Yue was loyal. Danzo's most perfect creation remained firmly in his hands. Chapter 473. Jiraiya lacks wisdom, Tsunade lacks strategy, only Orochimaru. As long as I achieve another great merit on the Kumogakure battlefield, I'll be the one with the most military achievements. Then I can steadily enact the plan, and my chances of becoming the fourth Hokage will be very high. Once I am Hokage, Root will no longer be just a subordinate branch of Anbu, it will stand on equal footing. Inside the Root base, Orochimaru painted a bright future for Danzo Shimura. Danzo's enthusiasm for promoting Orochimaru had nothing to do with fondness. This was a partnership. Danzo would push Orochimaru to the top, and in return, Orochimaru would back Danzo when the time came. Jiraiya doesn't have such grand ambitions and won't be a rival. Tsunade is gone soft, she's irrelevant, Danzo said, nodding. Drawing a persuasive vision was one of Danzo's great talents. That skill is what had convinced so many Root personnel to follow him. Danzo didn't rule his subordinates by jutsu. The tongue-cutting seal existed only to stop leaks. But Orochimaru's promises were not entirely empty. In Danzo's assessment, Orochimaru's chance to become Hokage was far higher than Jiraiya's or Tsunade's. Hiruzen favored Jiraiya, yes, but Jiraiya himself had little appetite for power. Hiruzen had offered Jiraiya opportunities to earn merit, and Jiraiya had refused them. To secure merit more quickly, Danzo, I hope you'll send Lord Mu Yue to assist me again. With him at my side, we can recreate the victory on the East Bank battlefield, Orochimaru said when he saw a flicker of approval on Danzo's face. This was the real point of Orochimaru's visit. He wanted Mu Yue on the battlefield. He'd asked cautiously, never pushing, because Danzo was too wary to be pried open. Orochimaru couldn't tell whether Mu Yue's earlier refusal had been Mu Yue's own or Danzo's order, but he resolved that whatever the reason, he would find a way to bring Mu Yue into the fight. If he could replace Danzo in Mu Yue's eyes, everything would fall into place. Danzo kept his outward calm but suspected Orochimaru's motives. I can send other elites, but not Mu Yue. He has other important assignments, Danzo refused. He could have handed Mu Yue to Orochimaru and let the other man take the credit, but if Orochimaru came asking for Mu Yue directly, it was a different story. Danzo deflected with the excuse that Mu Yue already had obligations, gentle enough not to offend, firm enough to block Orochimaru. So that's that? Too bad, Orochimaru said without changing his expression. Behind his face, his mind worked fast, fitting pieces together. If Danzo wouldn't allow Mu Yue to have close contact with him, it meant Danzo had discovered something. What could be more important than battlefield merit and the Hokage seat? Orochimaru believed his performance at the East Bank had earned him Mu Yue's respect, so being rebuffed suggested Danzo had interfered. Orochimaru dropped the subject of Mu Yue for the moment and returned to their plan for the fourth Hokage. He trusted his own abilities to eventually sway Mu Yue, and with Mu Yue's current strength, Danzo could not keep him bound forever. There would be more opportunities. Orochimaru made a mental note. This grievance would be settled once he was Hokage. After Orochimaru left, Danzo wore a thoughtful expression. He'd promised that Mu Yue had other arrangements, so he had to invent a suitable assignment, or Orochimaru might sniff out the truth. Let him train Root for a while, Danzo decided. Mu Yue's teaching ability was unique. Having him strengthen Root would both deal with Orochimaru and improve Root operatives. Satisfied, Danzo went to the Hokage's office. Because Mu Yue had once been a Root member, sending him to battle had to go through Danzo, but to redeploy him in any official way, Danzo needed Hiruzen Sarutobi's approval. Danzo disliked asking permission and feared Hiruzen would make him pay for their last high-level clash. Hiruzen was not magnanimous, Danzo knew that well, and would likely take his revenge. Danzo's gloom was familiar to passersby. It was his usual mask. At the Hokage office door, he paused, withdrew his foot from the half-open door, and knocked instead. For reasons he couldn't explain, the sound of the knock seemed to bring a sympathetic sigh from inside. "Enter," came Hiruzen's voice. Danzo stepped in. "Danzo, is there something you need?" Hiruzen asked. "Hey!" Danzo started, intending to use Hiruzen's given name, but checked himself. "Third Hokage." Hiruzen hid a small regret behind his calm. He had hoped Danzo would show some softness so that he could respond in kind. Danzo's stubborn caution frustrated that wish. Danzo cleared his throat and spoke to purpose. "I want to transfer Mu Yue back to Root. His instructional skills would be best used there to raise the quality of both Root and Anbu." On the face of it, the request made sense. When Root was created, it was to train Anbu. Reclaiming a talented instructor would be a legitimate goal. Danzo's posture was meant to preserve his persona. He was always working to strengthen Root. How many shinobi do Root and Anbu have combined? How many in the academy? How many in all of Konoha? Mu Yue cannot return to Root, Hiruzen answered flatly. Hiruzen would not let Mu Yue become Root's again. Root's darkness was unsuited to someone like Mu Yue. Danzo, if you applied the effort you spend on strengthening Root elsewhere, Konoha might be better served, Hiruzen added bluntly. Isn't that why I strengthen root, for Konoha? Danzo shot back. If I didn't know otherwise, would root still exist? Hiruzen said, putting down his pipe and letting out a curl of smoke. He acknowledged that whatever Danzo did was in service of Konoha, but Danzo had no sense of moderation. His excesses worried Hiruzen. Train root for a period. I'll authorize that, but nothing beyond it, Hiruzen decided. He would not hand Mu Yue back to root, but Mu Yue could train root, essentially having Mu Yue instruct Anbu and root without reassigning him. Danzo's expression soured. He left the office in silence, then slammed the wooden door so hard it reverberated. Hiru, third Hokage, you will regret this, he called through the door. Hiruzen smiled quietly. Danzo's hyper-caution had been oddly entertaining. If only Danzo had been bolder earlier, things might have been different. Danzo fumed as he walked away. Bang! Obito imagined an invisible armor on his fist and unleashed a punch. The trunk of a large tree cracked, but did not fall. Damn, the armament hockey secret technique is really hard, he muttered, scratching his head. He could have shattered the tree by using a breathing technique and channeling more chakra, but Obito was practicing pure armament hockey right now. No other tricks. The internal competition was a week away, and anxiety gnawed at him. The tournament, usually held every 3 months, had been postponed because of the war. Obito had hoped to use the delay to pull ahead, but the others had progressed too. Metkai had mastered the rock-breathing chakra mode, and Shisui had mastered the flame-breathing chakra mode. Obito didn't expect to beat Guy. Combining rock-breathing with the 5th and 6th 8 gates was monstrous. His aim was to reliably beat Kakashi and Shisui to reach the second round and avoid punishment. The problem was Shisui. Both of them had flame-breathing and 3 Tomoe Sharingan, but Shisui had mastered armament hockey while Obito had not. Even though Obito felt his flame-breathing was stronger, that small advantage couldn't overcome Shisui's armament mastery. I only have a better chance of drawing Kakashi, Obito concluded. Kakashi had the transparent world, Obito had flame-breathing. Kakashi had armament hockey, Obito had the 3 Tomoe Sharingan. They were nearly equal. Crack! Lightning flashed and a line of trees toppled before Kakashi. He sheathed his sword and shook his head. Not quite yet. Still a long way to go, he said, thinking of Mu Yue's lightning blade technique. It was harder than he expected. He wouldn't master it before the upcoming internal competition, but perhaps before the next. That made Kakashi think. His best chance was likely against Obito. After the East Bank battlefield, each of Mu Yue's 4 disciples had improved differently. Guy had advanced most, then Shisui, Kakashi and Obito sat in the same tier. Great Flame Ring, Flame Emperor, Shisui called, his flame-breathing chakra mode roaring as he unleashed a torrent of fire release across the river. With the internal competition close, Shisui had to set aside plans for expanding his reputation and return to intense training to further refine the flame-breathing. Metkai trained with iron determination, pumping weights until he was spent. Even as the strongest among them, he refused to ease up. His goal was to be the greatest taijutsu user in Konoha and the world. Seeing Guy's ferocity, Ryolu couldn't help but join the training as well. At 3 in the afternoon, while Mu Yue was training his disciples, an image flashed in his mind. His shadow clone at home. He had the clone continue the lesson and sent his main body to the Hokage office to see Hiruzen Sarutobi. A messenger had come earlier to find his clone, saying there was a mission for Mu Yue and asking him to come to the Hokage office for details. Knock, knock. Mu Yue knocked at the wooden door. Come in, came Hiruzen's voice. Mu Yue entered and bowed. Third Hokage. Hiruzen smiled and nodded. The mission is to train the Anbu en route, he said. This time I'll be sending more people than before. Last time, Hiruzen had sent only a few new recruits. He wasn't sure how many Mu Yue could handle teaching at once. Now he intended to mobilize as many Anbu as possible for Mu Yue's special training. Mu Yue's darkness breathing technique had proven effective. Some new Anbu who trained under him were already performing better in missions than many veterans. Hiruzen wanted the technique spread across the entire Anbu, both to present members and future recruits. The problem was that no existing Anbu member was proficient enough to teach it, so Hiruzen had to ask Mu Yue to take on the work. I understand. I'll do my best, Mu Yue replied. Danzo had already told him something about this earlier, but Danzo had been vague. Hiruzen stroked his goatee and smiled. I have full confidence in your teaching. Your classes and your disciples are both more outstanding than before. I only hope the war ends soon. Someone with your talents has even greater value in peacetime. If not for the war, Hiruzen admitted, he might have put 80% of the Anbu under Mu Yue's training. He even considered having Mu Yue teach others to become teachers to raise the overall level of Ninja Academy instructors and squad leaders. He didn't expect them to match Mu Yue, but even reaching half or a third of his level would transform Konoha over a decade or two. A single strong person like Hashirama or Madara could make themselves formidable. Mu Yue could make others stronger. For the convenience of teaching, I've set up a special training squad for you in the Anbu. Hiruzen continued. It's half a rank higher than a regular squad, but below a full captain. He went over the basic Anbu ranks briefly. Regular member, squad leader, with up to 3 subordinates, squad captain, in charge of up to 4 squads, then vice commander and commander. Hiruzen felt a full captain title would be bending the rules, but Mu Yue's contributions were immense, and giving him nothing would seem stingy. So he created a special squad, not too high, not too low. At present, you're the only member and the nominal squad captain, Hiruzen said. If you find people with teaching talent, recruit them. Mu Yue felt a flicker of surprise and gratitude, but kept his outward calm. Thank you, Lord Third Hokage. Hiruzen waved a hand. Don't make a fuss, it's only a nominal captaincy. He believed he'd actually done enough, though he kept that thought to himself. After the meeting, Mu Yue left the Hokage office and headed back to the south border forest. On the way, he reflected pragmatically. The training squad title meant little to him in practice. A squad captain was a mid to high-level post in the Anbu. His special rank was only nominal. He didn't even have subordinates yet. Compared to being a Ninja Academy instructor, where class rewards and ninjutsu development could be triggered, this title was less useful. 4 squads of subordinates still wouldn't give him enough numbers to trigger class rewards. The Anbu recruit training, however, could. Anbu were strong enough to trigger the intermediate class rewards. Steady S-rank evaluations each day would yield substantial gains, and teaching nature transformation or improving bloodline limits like ice release would be valuable. Mu Yue even wondered when he might trigger an advanced class reward. He believed there must be a higher tier, but the requirements would be very strict. Once back in the forest, he shelved those thoughts and returned to guiding his disciples. Preparing the Anbu training plan would take time. Extracting enough Anbu required adjustments to assignments and schedules. He had plenty of time to prepare. Around 10 that night, Mu Yue, still refining the yang seal, heard the neighboring house door open. He activated his Byakugan and turned his vision toward the adjacent home, Minato Namikaze's place, unused for some time. As the wall in his vision blurred, a familiar figure stepped inside. He returned early? Mu Yue thought, closing his Byakugan. Minato's letter had said he might not be back for months, but Orochimaru had volunteered to help on the hot water front, so Minato's return had been brought forward. A minute later, someone knocked on Mu Yue's door. He straightened the manuscript on his table and went down to answer. Mu Yue, long time no see, Minato said with a genuine smile. Orochimaru's timely support had given Minato a chance to rest. After heavy fighting, a frontline commander needed downtime. Minato had requested a break without hesitation. There was no immediate need for him in hot water now, and staying with Orochimaru would be a waste of his talents. Minato, long time, Mu Yue returned, smiling and inviting him in. Sorry to bother you so late. Can we talk tomorrow? Minato hesitated. He had rushed back hoping to make it in time for dinner, but travel delays had made him late. It was near bedtime, and he didn't want to impose. You came at just the right time, Mu Yue said. I was about to make a late-night snack. Come eat, and we can talk. That was an offer Minato couldn't refuse. He agreed, guilted into helping as repayment for all the times Mu Yue had helped since his transmigration. Mu Yue asked, Ramen okay, or would you like something else? Minato remembered the ramen Mu Yue had made in Rorin and nodded eagerly. They worked together in the kitchen, Mu Yue kneading dough, Minato chopping side dishes, and chatted as they cooked. Everyone's worried about the current situation, Minato said. Jiraiya says he doesn't even have time to write novels. Obito's in a similar boat. He doesn't even have time to read, Mu Yue replied with a smile. On the East Coast front, Obito had been so busy training and running missions that his free time had vanished. That sounds like Obito. Kakashi would probably lecture him, Minato chuckled. Good. Saves him from getting carried away and endangering the squad with a novel, Mu Yue agreed, echoing Kakashi's practical scolding. Minato's smile deepened as he pictured the scene, Obito clutching a ninja novel while Kakashi scolded and Rin stifled a laugh. On the teaching side, I've got a lot to learn from you, Mu Yue, Minato said more seriously, thinking of the students he hadn't seen in a long time. He felt he was inferior to Mu Yue as a teacher. Mu Yue surpassed him not just in ninjutsu instruction, but in many ways. If Obito and the others later became powerful and people praised Minato for being a good teacher, he'd be ashamed. Most of their growth had been Mu Yue's doing. Minato had contributed a little taijutsu and mission experience. No one's born a teacher, Mu Yue said as he finished the ramen. You've done very well, Minato. Obito and the others are happy with you. If you say so, I can't argue, Minato joked, rare lightness in his voice. The ramen was ready. Mu Yue handed a steaming bowl to Minato, and the aroma was irresistible. After 6 months of frontline duty, Minato almost grabbed his chopsticks right there in the kitchen. He steadied himself, took the bowl to the dining table, waited until Mu Yue sat, then finally dug in without the usual ceremony. The flavors hit him like a wave of homesickness and satisfaction, every bite worth the long journey. When he finished, Minato thanked Mu Yue profusely. It was nothing, just a small thing, Mu Yue said modestly. With his cooking skill it was no trouble, and Minato and Kushina had helped him a great deal since the transmigration. How's your Flying Thunder God training going? Juan, teach me to explain it again, Minato offered. His mastery of Flying Thunder God was his signature. Since Mu Yue was working on the same technique, Minato wanted to repay him by teaching. Mu Yue politely declined. Progress is good. I don't need an explanation. He understood his space-time aptitude. His master-level Flying Thunder God had been forced up by the Master Scroll. Minato teaching him would be a waste of both their time. I'd like a spar tomorrow to test our Flying Thunder God differences, Mu Yue suggested. His proficiency was much lower than Minato's, but he had other abilities and wanted to see how they matched up. Minato hesitated. I might be busy, either tonight or in the next few days. I've just returned from the front, and things will be hectic for a while. No rush, Mu Yue said, getting up to clear the dishes. Call me when you're free. Minato appreciated Mu Yue's consideration. He was tired from travel, and it was late, so they let the spar wait for another time. 475. Who is the #1 young person in Konoha? At noon, Minato Namikaze, as usual, packed a lunch from Mu Yue's house and went to Kushina's sealing technique room. The return of these ordinary long-missed routines made Minato Namikaze breathe easier. Even a shinobi like him felt worn down after too long on the battlefield. When he arrived, the Anbu assigned to watch Kushina deliberately pretended not to notice him. Given Minato's relationship with Kushina, he had permission to come and go from the sealed chamber, so he only gave the masked guards a slight smile and a nod. Kushina resented the Anbu. They were supposed to protect her, but in practice they were always watching, but Minato understood the village's position. The destructive power of a tailed beast was catastrophic. An accident could easily become a village-wide crisis. Such precautions were necessary. One of the Anbu returned the nod. You don't ignore a smiling face, especially when the face belonged to the Yellow Flash, one of Konoha's strongest in this new era. Before Minato could knock, he heard Kushina's voice inside the room, whining steadily. What time is it? Why isn't it lunchtime yet? Who decided on just 3 meals a day? Why not 6? Minato smiled helplessly and knocked. The food's here, he called. Sorry to be slow. Kushina continued complaining as she opened the door, then brightened when she saw Minato and the bento box he carried. Minato, perfect timing. I'm starving. She grabbed the box, set out the food on the table, and started eating with enthusiasm. Confined by the barrier and under the Anbu's watch every day, the one thing that still cheered Kushina up was a good meal, especially Mu Yue's cooking. Minato had learned how much she treasured that, which was why he'd hurried the night before to bring her lunch. They ate in companionable silence until they finished. Kushina wiped oil from the corner of her mouth with a napkin, and then, idly, studied Minato's face with a faint smile. He felt something on his skin and reached for it, then realized she was just staring. "What are you looking at?" he asked, puzzled. "My face," she said as if it were obvious. Minato felt like he'd wasted half a minute. Kushina giggled. "I was wondering if your cooking would be better if you wore black-framed glasses," she teased, gesturing at him. Minato sighed. "Even if I did, Kushina, my cooking still couldn't match Mu Yue's." He'd tried to learn from Mu Yue and improved under his guidance, but compared to Mu Yue, he felt like he was standing at the foot of a mountain. "Heh, just kidding," Kushina laughed. "But Minato, do you know? Mu Yue's reputation is enormous now. They're calling him Rie Yang Mu Yue, and everyone's debating who's the strongest of Konoha's younger generation." Minato nodded. The village had spread word of Mu Yue's victory on the East Bank battlefield to boost morale. Even absent commanders picked up on it. Kushina, naturally curious, leaned forward. "Have you fought Mu Yue? Who's stronger?" She was torn between pride for her future husband and admiration for Mu Yue. Before Mu Yue's recent feats, Kushina would have guessed Minato without hesitation. Minato had always been formidable, war only made him sharper, and his renown had grown through those trials. Mu Yue, by contrast, was an unknown on the scale of Kushina's experience until his astonishing performance on the East Bank. Many strong foes had fallen to him, and he'd even worked with Orochimaru to take down a Jinchuriki. That made direct comparison impossible without seeing them fight. "I haven't fought Mu Yue yet, so I don't know," Minato said. He had only seen Mu Yue fight once before, 2 years earlier at a campaign on the grass country battlefield, when they'd both faced a Jinchuriki. Mu Yue had improved immensely since then. "But Mu Yue and I will have a practice match soon. I'll tell you who wins." "How exciting! Where are you going to fight? I want to watch." "Not a chance," Minato said, glancing toward the sealed door. Kushina's range of movement was limited to the barrier around the village's core. Until she could completely block the Nine-Tails chakra interference, she couldn't leave. Neither he nor Mu Yue could realistically fight in the main district. The Anbu, or the Uchiha, would break them up the moment things got serious, and even if the fight continued, the collateral damage could bankrupt both men and the village. When Minato explained this, Kushina's face fell. "Everything's forbidden. So annoying," she pouted, flopping onto the bed. "There's no way around it. The third Hokage and the others are doing it for your safety," Minato said, coming to her side and smoothing a strand of her vivid red hair. "When it's over, I'll describe the whole fight to you in detail." That cheered her some. They spent the next half hour swapping stories, Minato's anecdotes about his disciples, which had Kushina laughing uproariously. "Why does Obito only get stronger in raw power, and not in anything else?" she asked, amused. Kushina had met Minato's students a few times. Obito and Kakashi could come into the barrier, but because of the restrictions, she hadn't spent much time with them. Her impressions were mostly from Minato's stories. After lunch, Minato said his goodbyes. He'd been busy all morning and would be busy all afternoon. His visit to Kushina had been the only break in a hectic day. In the afternoon, an Anbu operative approached Mu Yue. "Captain Hupsheng, I'm here to escort you into Anbu to collect some essential equipment," the masked shinobi said. Although Mu Yue's rank was partly honorary, he was formally an Anbu member, so the usual procedures applied. Mu Yue nodded and followed. He sent a shadow clone in his place. No need for the real him to appear for a simple pickup. Once inside the base, Feitian Shinji removed his cat-faced mask and bowed. "Teacher Mu Yue, apologies. I was on a mission, so I couldn't take my mask off earlier." Anbu protocol was strict about masks during operations. Even though Feitian Shinji had been a student of Mu Yue and respected him deeply, he hadn't revealed himself until they reached the Anbu station. Mu Yue smiled. He'd recognized Feitian Shinji immediately anyway. Even though a shadow clone couldn't use the appraisal technique, Mu Yue remembered his students by their build and bearing. Many Anbu members greeted Mu Yue as he passed. Some had been his students. Others had only heard of him. Mu Yue had only trained 15 Anbu the first time, and another 15 root operatives, so he didn't expect to see many familiar faces from the original timeline. In fact, The only original Anbu-type characters he could recall were Kakashi, Yamato, and Itachi, and their statuses had shifted enough that they weren't necessarily present as he remembered them. After collecting the equipment, Feichian Shinji led Mu Yue to the Anbu captain's office. "Captain Habsheng, please sit," the man behind the desk said kindly. Mu Yue sat without ceremony. Feichian Shinji, on his own, bowed and left, closing the door behind him. The captain then introduced himself with a smile. "I'm Sarutobi Masanari, Anbu captain." The Sarutobi name made Mu Yue guess the man's background. Sarutobi Masanari spoke with the easy warmth of someone who had heard a great deal about Mu Yue. "Captain Habsheng, I've admired you for a long time," he said. Even before Mu Yue became famous for his deeds on the East Bank, Hiruzen and Asuma Sarutobi had praised him highly. From Hiruzen, Mu Yue was the ideal genius to carry on a legacy. From Asuma, he was an extraordinary teacher, strong and approachable. Such praise naturally made Sarutobi Masanari eager to meet him, though he admitted he'd felt a little overshadowed by all the comparisons the elders sometimes made. Masanari handed Mu Yue a stack of documents. "Here's the list of trainees and relevant information. Including Root, there are 40 people in total, 25 Anbu and 15 Root. Since Root was nominally under Anbu, their roster filtered through the Anbu office." Mu Yue skimmed the list. About half of the 40 had trained with him previously. The other half were new. He guessed the third Hokage wanted some operatives to master the darkness breathing technique and also hoped to popularize it. Teaching a core group would accelerate wider adoption. "How's your training plan going? Can you share anything?" Masanari asked, genuinely curious. Mu Yue's prior training had produced startling results. In just 2.5 months, his 15 trainees had significantly improved. Masanari wanted to know what was next. "For now, only new moves for the darkness breathing technique are finalized," Mu Yue replied after a moment. "Other details are still being worked out." He planned to focus on refining breathing techniques and gaining nature transformation experience, especially developing yang release breathing and improving his wood release. The yang release work was most crucial. He needed the improved lecture content understanding, reward from an intermediate lecture S rank, to accelerate that development. "New moves for the darkness breathing technique?" Masanari said with a laugh. "Makes me want to join." He had tried the darkness breathing technique from Mu Yue's notes and had some success, though his proficiency lagged. Mu Yue smiled but didn't discourage him. Masanari's rank and skill made him a promising student if he chose to train. Their conversation was short-lived. Masanari had other duties and left soon after. Mu Yue's shadow clone didn't linger long either. A short distance from the Anbu base, it dispelled, returning its memories to Mu Yue's main body, waiting in the south border forest. Sarutobi Masanari, the Anbu captain. Mu Yue, having absorbed the shadow clone's memories, wore a thoughtful expression. "Mu Yue-sensei, we rested enough. We're ready to begin," Kakashi said, standing and walking over to him. Their strength had been building, and to avoid accidental injuries during the matches, they'd asked Mu Yue to act as referee. With Mu Yue nearby, they could fight freely, knowing any injuries would be treated immediately. Rin's medical skills reached Jonin level, but Mu Yue's healing was even stronger, second only to Tsunade. "Then let's draw lots." Mu Yue nodded and took a small wooden box from a scroll. Kakashi didn't hesitate. He plunged his hand in and pulled out a piece of paper. As the first drawer, he couldn't know who his opponent would be, whatever number he drew. "Number 1, Kakashi said, reading the paper. "I'll go second." Obito volunteered without hesitation. If Kakashi had number 1, Obito figured he had a good chance of getting number 2 and facing Kakashi in the internal disciple match. He reached into the box solemnly, muttering to himself, "Please be Kakashi. Please don't be Guy." Then, remembering recent misfortunes, he quickly added, "Please be Might Guy, not Kakashi," and plunged his hand in. He pulled out a paper and stared in disbelief. "Number 3. Obito's eyes widened. Kakashi was number 1. That left Guy or Shisui as potential first-round opponents. If it were Shisui, he could still fight. But Might Guy as an opponent meant an early, humiliating defeat, especially with Rin watching. Might Guy laughed loudly and stepped up, eager to draw. His ideal opponent, of course, was Kakashi, his lifelong rival. "I believe you feel the same way, my rival," he said, flashing his grin as he grabbed a paper. No, I don't, Kakashi replied flatly. Obito watched Guy's paper closely, wishing he could have used his Sharingan to see inside. Please don't be number 4, he prayed this time. When Guy opened his paper, the grin faltered. Number 4, Might Guy said regretfully. Obito's expression froze. He'd drawn Might Guy. Rival, it seems we can only meet in the second round, Might Guy said, giving Kakashi an encouraging thumbs up. Do your best, Kakashi answered, relieved. Shisui would be a tougher match than Obito, but Kakashi had a real chance against him. Shisui stepped forward and took the number 2 paper that Obito had eyed so desperately. Rin, you don't need to train right now. Come sit for a while, Mu Yue called to Rin Nohara. Obito's mood darkened further. He'd hoped Rin's Jonin training might keep her away from the matches, but fate had other plans. Rin gracefully sat beside Obito, her eyes fixed on the two who had already assumed their ready stances, Shisui and Kakashi. Flame-breathing chakra mode, armament haki secret technique, 3 Tomoe Sharingan, plus excellent combat sense, only real drawback is his age, Kakashi thought, unable to help an inward sigh. He was a genius, praised since childhood, but even among geniuses there were differences. Shisui, despite his youth, was truly talented. As long as I control my chakra and stay cautious, my chances are high, Shisui quickly planned. Kakashi's lightning release sword techniques hit with brutal burst damage, but Shisui's 3 Tomoe Sharingan could read his movements. If distance was kept, Shisui could evade with body flicker technique. Kakashi could also use lightning release bursts to dodge, but his total chakra reserves weren't as great as Shisui's, and the lightning release transformation to enhance his body burned chakra fast. In a long exchange, Kakashi would be the first to tire. Begin, Mu Yue announced. Both moved at once. Kakashi pressed forward, while Shisui retreated. Shisui kept his distance. Having just come from the battlefield, both men knew each other's strengths and didn't need to probe. Fire release. Phoenix Sage fire technique. Shisui formed hand seals as he backed away, spitting out a hail of small fireballs toward Kakashi. Normally he would open with a great fireball, but that was too slow. Kakashi could dodge it without strengthening his body. Earth release. Earth flow wall. Kakashi didn't dodge. He formed seals and raised an earthen wall with a dog's head carved in the center to block the incoming fireballs. Boom! The fireballs struck the wall and exploded. Flame and shattered rocks scattered outward. Kakashi's wall held. After the last fireball, the wall was only slightly damaged. Is he trying to sneak underground with the shadow clone trick again? Shisui wondered. Though Kakashi now favored lightning sword techniques, those who knew him understood his earth skills weren't far behind. He was adept at using earth release to mask movement. Can't Kakashi try something different? He always does the same thing, Obito complained, nursing fresh resentment. Rin smiled gently. Tactics that win aren't always new. Obito fell silent, but inwardly cheered for Shisui. Go, Shisui, give Kakashi a good beating, he thought. Anticipating an underground infiltration, Shisui concentrated chakra in his eyes and activated his 3 Tomoe Sharingan. It didn't grant X-ray sight, but its observational power was formidable. Even underground, Shisui could sense Kakashi's approach and dodge. A Kakashi suddenly dropped from the earthen wall, body flashing with lightning as he charged. Shisui's Sharingan tracked the movement, and he dodged left. At the same time, Shisui noticed a faint disturbance in the ground and, without hesitation, pushed his body flicker technique to the limit, creating several body lengths of distance in an instant. Kakashi leapt out wielding a lightning blade. This speed, something's wrong, Shisui thought. If Kakashi were pushing to his absolute limit, the Sharingan could still follow him, but it wouldn't look effortless like this. Lightning blades scatter. Kakashi slashed, and electricity sizzled outward like a web. This variation, condensing chakra into a point, then splitting it for an area attack, was an innovation Kakashi had adapted after returning to Konoha. It caught Shisui slightly off guard. He hadn't expected Kakashi to have developed this slash variation. Fire release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Seeing that he couldn't dodge in time, Shisui pushed his breathing to the extreme and entered flame-breathing chakra mode. He condensed a vast amount of chakra, transformed it into fire release, and spat forth a column of scorching flame. He could have chosen armament haki secret technique and taken the hit directly, but flame breathing allowed instant nature transformation and ninjutsu without hand signs, a faster counter, and a bid to seize the initiative. Boom. Lightning and fire collided, producing a violent explosion. Thunder roared, and flame howled like a dragon. The blast rocked them. Shisui looked disheveled, but remained steady. Flame breathing strengthened his body enough to withstand the shock. Are we going to see who has the more overwhelming burst? I might not lose this, Kakashi thought. He gripped his white fang short sword and poured chakra into lightning release to vitalize his body. Though he hadn't mastered Thoughtless Blade, the training had sharpened his burst power. If he couldn't win in his strongest element now, he had no business fighting. Lightning crackled around Kakashi as he pushed his breath to the extreme and entered the transparent world state, mobilizing every revitalized ounce of power for a single slash, and advanced. Shisui stood his ground in flame-breathing mode. He showed no intention of yielding. Kakashi had a hunch something was wrong. The man in front of him was cautious Shisui, not the impulsive Obito, but he didn't back down. 1 more meter, and he would be in absolute kill range. Within that span, unless someone were Metkai with the 6 gates, no disciple of Mu Yue could evade a full power slash. Kakashi trusted that Shisui had a plan, but he also trusted his own ability. If he unleashed this slash successfully, the match would be over. The other disciples watched intensely. Why go head-to-head on burst? The point of fire is R. Ange, Obito muttered. If Shisui kept fighting like this, he might lose. A war of attrition against Kakashi's limited chakra would be wiser. Then, unexpectedly, Shisui stopped projecting his fire. Most of his chakra collected in his eyes. His blood-red Sharingan stared calmly at the approaching Kakashi. A crimson haze spread into Kakashi's vision until everything was filled with blood red. Kakashi's movement hesitated. How is this possible? I'm in transparent world, and I fell for a genjutsu, he thought, stunned. Since he truly mastered transparent world, genjutsu had not troubled him. Transparent world gave him absolute control of his body's chakra, letting him detect and dispel manipulations almost instantly. But in that moment, his transparent world chakra was disturbed and didn't dispel the illusion immediately. By the time Kakashi broke free, Shisui had closed and was at his side, a kunai poised at his heart. Kakashi finally understood why Shisui had let him come so close. Shisui had been waiting for the perfect distance. If they'd been half a meter farther apart, Kakashi might have survived the exchange and dragged the match into another round. Shisui wins, Mu Yue announced. Shisui, you fought well. I knew you could win. Obito cheered when Kakashi lost. What terrified him most was the thought of Kakashi coming out on top while he hadn't. Now Kakashi had been defeated, and since Obito himself couldn't possibly beat Metkai, they were in the same boat. Neither could lecture the other. Better yet, Kakashi couldn't refute him for 2 weeks. The thought made Obito even happier. Kakashi only glanced at Obito with that cool, unreadable stare. He had lost, true, but he also had an idea. His biggest mistake had been assuming Shisui's genjutsu couldn't affect him while in transparent world. Shisui's genjutsu hadn't worked before simply because it wasn't strong enough. In actual combat, it had proven otherwise. Perhaps, Kakashi thought, he could use this as a training method for transparent world itself. If Shisui repeatedly cast genjutsu on him while he maintained transparent world, and he forced himself to dispel it each time, his dispelling speed and the fine control of his internal chakra might improve. It was worth trying. If it failed, he'd only waste a little time. If it succeeded, the payoff would be significant. Shisui watched Metkai with quiet eyes. He'd already beaten Obito in an internal match and had just defeated Kakashi. Only Metkai stood between him and the next step. He wasn't overconfident. He didn't believe he could beat Metkai with 8 gates stacked against rock-breathing chakra mode, but he would fight hard, learn from the loss, and train to close the gap. Obito, Guy, get ready, Mu Yue said after patching Shisui's injuries. Obito inhaled, squared his shoulders, and stepped into the arena. Metkai followed with a grin that flashed white teeth in the sunlight. Kakashi, does Obito take his camera into the south border forest? Kakashi asked suddenly. A picture was sometimes more convincing than an argument. I did see him take it sometimes, Rin said after thinking it over, but he doesn't bring it every day. Kakashi nodded, formed hand signs, and spawned a shadow clone to retrieve Obito's camera while his main body stayed and watched. Begin! Obito didn't hesitate. He focused his breathing to the extreme and entered flame-breathing chakra mode. Against Metkai, who'd go all out at the slightest provocation, Obito couldn't afford to warm up with small fire release tests. He activated his chakra, flames sprung to life on his hands and feet, and he charged, choosing to make each punch and kick a flaming strike, fire release taijutsu. Metkai, decisive as ever, opened 4 gates in quick succession. His aura spiked, raw power pouring from him. Obito lashed out with fire release flame fist, a blazing punch. Guy met it calmly, gathering chakra into his own fist. When the fists collided, the flames on Obito's hand exploded outward, and an unimaginable force battered through Obito's body. He could hold on for only a moment before rocketing backward like a cannonball, smashing through several trees. Kakashi, watching in transparent world, had predicted the moment and pulled out Obito's camera to snap the shot. Cough, cuff, as expected of Guy, Obito wheezed as he got to his feet. He hadn't really expected to win a straight-up taijutsu duel against a pure taijutsu master. His plan had been to damage Guy's fist with heat and trade blows for any small advantage. Yet when he'd examined Guy's hand afterward, it showed almost no burn, only reddened as if scalded by hot water. Rock-breathing chakra mode with crude chakra armor, this level of defense? Obito's eyelids twitched. He'd heard Mu Yue say rock-breathing enhanced defense, but he hadn't realized it would be this effective. With armament hockey secret technique added, Guy might bathe in ninjutsu and barely feel it. Guy ignored the probing stare and used Leaf Handblade, a surge of air, which Obito dodged with his 3-tomo Sharingan. Guy's maneuver was a feint. He reappeared beside Obito and forced him back with a green dragon of wind. Leaf Dragon God! Obito responded with all the remaining chakra he could. El Muster, Great Flame Ring, Flame Emperor. The fireball obliterated the area around him. Trees turned to ash, the ground scorched. Exhausted, Obito could only sit on the ground and nod in satisfaction. He hadn't lost completely. He had inflicted damage and had been beaten only after burning out. Guy wins, Mu Yue announced. Metkai laughed and helped Obito up, thumb raised in praise. This fire release is very youthful. Needs a little more speed, though. Obito scratched his head and smiled. In his opinion, Flame Emperor was just a bigger, more expensive Great Fireball technique. It used too much chakra for everyday combat. Fire Dragon Flame Bullet was usually more practical. Still, in a one-on-one flash of power, it left an impression. Obito stuck his chest out and sauntered over to Kakashi. Kakashi, why do you have my camera? He demanded. Just recording life, Kakashi replied faintly, showing Obito the photos instead of giving the camera back. Obito stared, horrified. The photo caught the precise moment Guy's punch sent him flying. Tree fragments, green leaves plastered to his coat, his face distorted by speed. He made a grab for the camera, exhausted and powerless to take it from Kakashi. Develop the photos quickly, Kakashi said, handing the camera to his shadow clone. The clone sprinted off. Obito could only watch it shrink into the distance with growing hatred. If he hadn't used Flame Emperor at the end, he might have had the energy to snatch the camera back. As it was, both he and Kakashi had solid reasons to grumble about the day's results. After a brief intermission, the final internal match began. Shisui versus Metkai. 8 gates, gate of limit, open, Guy roared, pushing to the 5th gate. His chakra flared violently. A 5th gate Metkai was brutal, barely controllable. He preferred not to combine it with rock-breathing chakra mode unless absolutely necessary. He launched a whirlwind kick, Leaf Great Whirlwind. Shisui's 3-tomo Sharingan tracked the movement. He sidestepped, tossed a flaming shuriken, and then tried genjutsu on Guy. As expected, the genjutsu did nothing. Guy was far too wary. Guy countered with Leaf Handblade and surged forward. Shisui spat out a great fireball that shoved Guy back. Shisui adjusted. He'd learned from Obito's match. Obito's flame breathing had been stronger, but Shisui had a trick, the bent spoon, a tool that could amplify yin release when chakra was poured into it. If he fed it enough chakra, he could unleash genjutsu and yin techniques far beyond his usual solo strength. Now, though, Shisui chose to borrow Obito's fighting style, focus on flame-breathing taijutsu. He switched his breathing rhythm and ignited flame-breathing chakra mode, then fired a scorching spinning kick. Fire release, leaf whirlwind. Guy blasted him back, hardly slowed. Guy's foot heated slightly, and he judged Shisui's flame breathing as weaker than Obito's, but still dangerous. Shisui wasn't careless. He saved his major trick for the right moment. When Guy closed in, Shisui unleashed his trap. He poured flame breathing, a compressed fire technique in his shoulder, and cloaked it with a jet-black armament haki, enhanced by the bent spoon's input. Fire release, blazing impact, he roared. Leaf-strong whirlwind collided with blazing impact in a violent explosion. The ground cracked, rocks and dirt were hurled everywhere, and dust filled the air. The watching recruits gaped. No one had expected that level of clash. Why isn't Guy using rock-breathing chakra mode? Obito muttered. Guy had left himself open by avoiding rock-breathing at first. Shisui had baited him with a show of weakness. Guy had misread it and paid for the miscalculation. When he realized what had happened, Guy hit the critical point and triggered rock-breathing chakra mode, using sheer, pure power and defense to blunt Shisui's attack and counter. In the end, Might Guy's overwhelming physical force prevailed. Guy wins, Mu Yue called again, then moved in to treat Shisui and Guy. Ugh, just burn the test papers. Who entered them anyway? Obito groaned, already dreading the punishment portion of the training. The idea of failing the next internal battle in 3 months spurred him to train hard. He vowed to master the armament haki secret technique before then. Rin Nohara, exhausted from tending to the injured, offered gentle reminders. Rest if you're hurt. Don't rush training. She wasn't interested in the internal battles. Even the eliminated Kakashi and Obito could easily outmatch her. She only wanted to finish her Jonin assessment. Kakashi rested briefly, then sought out Mu Yue to ask about his transparent world training idea. Mu Yue, who had developed the breathing technique, understood transparent world best. If Kakashi was going to experiment, he didn't want him stumbling into mistakes. You can try, Mu Yue said after a moment. In Mu Yue's experience, transparent world was a realm. Its core properties remained consistent, but the way it was used depended on the practitioner's other abilities and physical fitness. Since Mu Yue himself had obtained a second perfect-level breathing technique, his version of transparent world had evolved. Wider external perception, more detailed sensing, and finer internal chakra manipulation. He'd tried to train it more, but progress had been slow. Still, he believed transparent world could grow with the right experiments. Buoyed by Mu Yue's approval, Kakashi approached Shisui. Shisui, can you help me test an idea? Shisui, replaying the battle in his head, looked up and nodded. As long as it doesn't take too long. Kakashi explained. He would maintain transparent world while Shisui repeatedly cast genjutsu at him. Shisui would get genjutsu practice while Kakashi improved his dispel speed and the internal subtleties of transparent world. At worst, Kakashi would gain only experience dispelling genjutsu, worthwhile either way. Shisui asked thoughtful, should the genjutsu be the same strength as in the internal match, or a bit stronger? Shisui took out the bent spoon and explained. When chakra was fed into it, the tool amplified yin release. For non-combat experiments, he could pour as much chakra as he liked and crank up the magnification. That meant the genjutsu could be stronger than in a normal fight. Kakashi hadn't realized Shisui had been augmenting himself during the internal battle. Start with the intensity from the internal battle, Kakashi said after thinking a moment. Move slowly at first. Shisui agreed, concentrated chakra into his eyes, injected chakra into the bent spoon, and met Kakashi's invisible gaze. He cast genjutsu. Kakashi dispelled it as quickly as he could. They repeated the cycle until fatigue set in, then rested and trained in other ways. Obito, watching them stare at each other for a long time, muttered, when did Shisui and Kakashi get so close? They're just having a staring contest. He didn't understand the subtleties, and he didn't object. He had his own goals to pursue. Armament haki. That afternoon, Mu Yue stopped by Tsunade's house to cook a meal, packed portions for Kushina and Minato, and sent a shadow clone with Minato's share. After dinner, he returned home to finalize his Anbu training plan. The new course would start in 5 days. Mu Yue had to prepare the subjects and develop any ninjutsu still unfinished. The core of the curriculum would be darkness breathing technique and its advanced secrets. Mu Yue had developed an augmenting skill, darkness burning technique, a chakra-consuming burst that temporarily raised physical abilities, inspired by the Demon Slayer mark. It wasn't as powerful as the original, but it had a low threshold and was easy to learn. He also intended to teach nature transformation. Previously, he'd made D rank and C rank 5 great nature ninjutsu. Now he'd develop and teach B rank versions. Fireball C technique, vacuum slash, and water severing wave were done. Earth and lightning were the remaining pieces. For those, he planned to take cues from existing ideas and forge them into something practical for the Anbu. 2 days before the course began, Mu Yue finished all the ninjutsu and the detailed teaching plan. He was ready. It was the first day of the second phase of Anbu training. When Mu Yue arrived at the training ground, all 40 Anbu and root ninja due for instruction were already assembled, waiting for the class to begin. Mu Yue walked up and, as usual, gave them a quick appraisal scan. Several of the ninja glanced at him with curiosity. Although Mu Yue had only been appointed a squad leader a few days earlier and had no prior service in Anbu, his reputation had already preceded him. 15 Anbu who had trained under him spoke highly of him, and everyone knew he was the creator of the darkness-breathing technique. Because the technique was so practical and easy to pick up, Hiruzen Sarutobi had been pushing to spread it through the Anbu. But since no one within Anbu had really mastered it yet, promotion had been slow. Only a few talented ninja had learned it properly. Still, Hiruzen's efforts made the name Hayate Mugetsu familiar to everyone in Anbu. "I am Hayate Mugetsu, and I am in charge of this training," Mu Yue announced. "Today's training will be in 2 groups. Those who participated in the previous session move to the right to form a new line. The rest stay where you are." Because both Hiruzen and Danzo Shimura had promoted the darkness-breathing technique, most of the trainees had at least some exposure to it, although proficiency was generally pitifully low. A few had reached decent levels, and Mu Yue wouldn't make those who'd already mastered the basics repeat content. The group split obediently and, by coincidence, ended up as 2 perfect teams of 20. Shadow clone technique. Mu Yue formed the seal and created a clone, instructing it to take the more experienced students a short distance away so the 2 groups wouldn't interfere with one another. During the previous phase, Mu Yue had spent most of the first day in practice battles to establish authority. This time, he could teach right away. He didn't yet have the broad fame of a Sannin-level Hokage candidate, but he was known as a powerful Konoha ninja throughout the Shinobi world, and no one in Anbu could deny his strength. "You should all know the basics of the darkness-breathing technique?" Mu Yue asked. He had been given that information by the Anbu. It wasn't something he inferred from his appraisal. Everyone nodded. "Then I'll skip the introductory stuff and go straight into the details." Seeing no objections, Mu Yue started with the basic breathing posture. Keeping a specific posture helps you internalize the breathing rhythm of the darkness-breathing technique more quickly. The rhythm is one of its core elements. Both Anbu and Root listened carefully. 2 hours later, they had to admit the rumors were true. Mu Yue was an excellent teacher. His explanations were clear and economical, and during practice, he could identify and correct core problems quickly. In just 2 hours, he cleared up issues that had confused many of them for weeks. "Take a 15-minute break," Mu Yue said, leaving a shadow clone with the first group as he went to the other. The clone understood the technique as the original did, but it didn't carry Mu Yue's teaching skill buff. He planned to alternate 2 hours or half a day per group, so both teams would benefit from his main body teaching whenever possible. After the break, Mu Yue's main body began instructing the veteran squad while the clone warmed the other team up. Then Mu Yue announced, "Next, you'll learn an advanced technique of the darkness-breathing technique, the darkness-burning technique." Unlike the breathing technique chakra mode, the darkness-burning technique didn't require extremely high proficiency. Even those below the proficient level could practice it, though it would be harder. The announcement surprised the trainees. Many expected only to refine their darkness breathing, not to be taught an advanced offshoot so soon. The darkness-burning technique significantly boosts strength and speed by consuming chakra, Mu Yue explained. Think of it as a temporary amplification of the darkness-breathing technique. Eyes lit up. The darkness breathing technique already granted explosive power. An additional amplifier on top of that sounded irresistible. Mu Yue's 2 sentences had ignited the veteran student's desire to learn. Push your breathing to its limit, but don't let it become chaotic, Mu Yue instructed as he began the formal teaching. Though he had only recently developed the darkness burning technique, its essence was effectively a degraded form of breathing technique chakra mode, and he explained it as smoothly as he had the basic technique. Sarutobi Shinji couldn't help but admire the implications. If Mu Yue's methods, both the darkness breathing and darkness burning, were passed down as clan secret techniques, a clan could rise to great power in the shinobi world within a century. Fadian Shinji felt relief at being part of the course. Even if Hiruzen would have offered the chance to learn to other students eventually, Mu Yue's direct guidance made a huge difference. Learning advanced techniques without him would be far harder. Completed a mid-level lecture. Rewards. Breathing technique. Understanding improved. Darkness breathing technique plus 48. Basic breathing plus 22. Lightning breathing 11. When the class ended, the rewards popped up. Mu Yue focused on the breathing technique understanding improved reward, an S-rank mid-level class reward he had deliberately chased. It increased his grasp of the essence of breathing techniques. After organizing the newly acquired knowledge, Mu Yue headed toward Tsunade's home. One class reward wouldn't dramatically raise his level. To develop the yang release breathing he envisioned, he would need to grind many more such rewards. Meanwhile, at the root headquarters, Danzo Shimura waited impatiently. What did Mu Yue teach today? Any difference between what Root and Anbu were taught? How well did he teach? Danzo demanded of the Root ninja who had just returned. Danzo was angry, but not at Mu Yue, at Hiruzen. Hiruzen had allowed 25 Anbu to attend this training, while Root had only been permitted to send 15, the same as last time. Danzo's charge of double standards had driven him to the Hokage's office, where, in his irritation, he'd barged in and been chastised for not knocking. Hiruzen then targeted minor issues to needle him further. Danzo had left muttering threats. Teacher Mu Yue taught the darkness breathing technique and the darkness burning technique, the Root ninja reported. No difference in content between Root and Anbu. Mu Yue taught as well as always. Danzo nodded, asked a few more detailed questions, then dismissed the group. He cursed Hiruzen inwardly and recalled an earlier dilemma, whether to tell Hiruzen about the wood release ninja Danzo had kept hidden. Wood release was special to Konoha. Since the village's founding, there had been only one confirmed user, Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage, the so-called ninja god. That created endless speculation. People assumed any wood release user might be capable of godlike power. Danzo had long since abandoned the idea of informing Hiruzen. If Hiruzen learned of Yamato, he would surely move to take him for training at once. Danzo would not allow it. The strongest wood release ninja must be refined within Root, in secret, for what Danzo believed was Konoha's own good. He went to check on his secret ward. Danzo, accompanied by 2 trusted Root agents, traveled to the concealed location outside Konoha, where he had Yamato stationed. Yamato was the only successful product of Orochimaru's experiments with Hashirama cells. Orochimaru had assumed the experiments failed, and Danzo's opportunism had let him acquire the subject. Keeping Yamato outside the village reduced the chance that Hiruzen or Orochimaru would discover him. Lord Danzo, Yamato greeted respectfully. Show me your strongest wood release jutsu, Danzo said. Although Danzo couldn't use wood release himself, he possessed data on Hashirama's techniques. He had taught Yamato chakra control and assassination techniques. Yamato had been practicing wood release chakra. He formed seals, condensed chakra into wood release nature, and activated the jutsu. A tender sprout broke ground and rapidly grew into a tree slightly taller than Danzo. Danzo frowned. This is no different from before. Yamato, have you not been training diligently? Danzo had kept close watch on Yamato. Daily reports said he trained of his own accord, but Yamato's display convinced Danzo he'd been slacking. Yamato clutched his clothing hem and tried to explain. I haven't been lazy, Lord Danzo. If you look closely, it's 5 centimeters taller than before. Danzo's eyes hardened. You are the elite of Root's elite. Your goal is to surpass Root's current most perfect creation, Hayate Mugetsu. In 2 weeks, you've only advanced this much. Are you worthy of the cultivation I've invested in you? Yamato's protest died on his lips when he saw Danzo's stern expression. Lord Danzo, I'm sorry. If Danzo, his savior, said he'd been lax, perhaps he had been. It's good you recognize your mistake. As long as you train according to my plan, you will become the strongest ninja en route. No, in Konoha, perhaps even the entire Shinobi world, Danzo said, unwittingly painting a grand image to motivate the boy. Yamato nodded, not grasping the full meaning, but determined to live up to Danzo's faith. Danzo softened, producing 2 dinners. Yamato brightened. They ate, and Danzo spoke kindly. Train hard. This isn't for me, but for you, for Root, and for Konoha. Later, as Danzo returned toward the village, the kindly expression fell away and his usual coldness returned. He knew how to forge loyalty. He was certain he could make even an under-10 child utterly devoted to Root in 5 years. Yamato's growth, however, was slower than Danzo had hoped. 2 thoughts occurred to him. Either Yamato hadn't accumulated enough power yet, or he lacked a suitable teacher. Edo Tensei to summon Hashirama was out of the question, too risky and taboo. The better option, find an outstanding living teacher. Mu Yue's name rose to the top of that list. His teaching ability was exceptional. The performance of Mu Yue's disciples in battle had proved it. If Yamato entered Konoha and trained under Mu Yue, his growth would accelerate. Yet bringing Yamato into Konoha created another danger: exposure. Danzo worried Hiruzen or others might discover the wood release secret. Still, with a careful plan and Mu Yue's proven loyalty to Danzo, the risk could be managed. Danzo sent his most trusted man the next day to bring Yamato into Konoha, and that evening he summoned Mu Yue to Root. Danzo-sama, Mu Yue greeted respectfully, arriving unsure what had brought him there. After sweeping the base with his Byakugan, he had an inkling. Danzo enjoyed seeing that same expression of respect he'd gotten for decades. I have an important mission for you, one that concerns Konoha's future, Danzo said in a low voice. As a former wielder of wood release after Hashirama, Danzo believed Yamato's importance rivaled that of a tailed beast. For Konoha's future, I'll give everything, Mu Yue answered immediately. Mu Yue even formed a shadow clone to rush to the Hokage to cancel his training mission. His initiative was almost reflexive. Danzo stopped him. If Mu Yue abruptly canceled training, Hiruzen's attention would be drawn, and Root could be exposed. Release your clone and listen, Danzo ordered. Your current training mission need not be canceled. It doesn't require much of your time yet. Proceed with it as planned. Mu Yue froze and then obediently stood down. Your mission is to instruct Root's wood release ninja, Danzo said straightforwardly. Mu Yue looked stunned. Danzo smiled triumphantly. Few in Konoha would be surprised by how meaningful such a request was. You are the most outstanding ninja I've cultivated since Root's founding. I believe you are capable of training a wood release user. Mu Yue showed a grateful expression, inwardly amazed at Danzo's boldness. Danzo's trust in him must be deep to hand over something so important. Danzo then brought Yamato into the room. This is the person you'll teach. Codename Yamato. To Danzo, names were tools. Root used codenames to bind recruits to the organization. Yamato looked up at Mu Yue for the first time. Mu Yue smiled gently. To Yamato, that smile was like sunlight in the dim office, bright and strangely comforting. It made him instinctively fond of Mu Yue, even on first impression. Danzo continued, this teaching must be kept secret. I'll arrange for him to live in a remote area in Konoha's southern suburbs. You'll teach him at the nearest training ground. Decide the schedule and the curriculum. Mu Yue accepted the mission solemnly. Danzo supplied a large amount of wood release jutsu data and cultivation experience, and asked Mu Yue to plan Yamato's learning program. He also sweetened the deal. He raised Mu Yue's authority within Root to squad leader level in practice, enabling him to mobilize Root ninja below squad leader rank when needed, though Mu Yue wouldn't officially be part of Root, and provided money, secret medicines, and jutsu scrolls, most importantly, wood release jutsu data. Mu Yue calculated the most meaningful benefit to him was the wood release techniques. Although he had innate wood release skill, he hadn't learned any wood release jutsu yet. Nyamata, 12,000. Potential, S. Hashirama Cell's basic talent. Skills, wood release, beginner, 4,500. Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Proficient, 203,000. Water Release Chakra Nature Transformation. On his way home, Mu Yue reviewed Yamato's stats. Because Yamato hadn't cultivated long, his skill numbers were poor except for chakra and potential. To Danzo, he looked like an unpolished child. To Mu Yue, he was an uncut gem. The system's reward mechanism favored taking younger disciples, so Yamato's current weakness was actually an advantage. Mu Yue's only regret was that he had no disciple slots available. The system was strict. In nearly 3 years since transmigrating, he had only gained 1 disciple slot and didn't know if he would get more. Back home, Mu Yue had barely begun studying yang-release breathing when Minato knocked on his door. "I can confirm the combat time now. Tomorrow afternoon I'm very free," Minato said, a little embarrassed. He'd said earlier he might be busy for a few days. It had stretched to nearly 2 weeks. "Sunday works for me too." Mu Yue thought a moment, then handed Minato a cup of tea. Training wasn't every day, 6 days a week in their plan, with Sunday off. "All right then, you can decide the venue," Minato said after a sip. Mu Yue suggested the place he usually trained his disciples. "My students will be watching." "Fine. Most of them are mine too," Minato replied, blushing at the awkwardness. He realized he'd been lax in visiting Obito and others since returning and resolved to shoulder his responsibilities properly. "A battle with the Yellow Flash. Truly exciting," Mu Yue teased. "A battle with Ryeyang Muye is equally exciting," Minato answered with a smile. He was looking forward to the match. To keep things fair, he hadn't discussed developing new ninjutsu with Mu Yue. Minato's own jutsu, inspired by the tailed beast ball, was near completion, just a little way from success. Konoha Village, Training Ground 22. 2 golden figures faced each other, both smiling. A short distance away, a cluster of onlookers watched with eager anticipation. "Who do you think will win?" Obito asked Kakashi and the others. Mu Yue and Minato Namikaze had both taught him, Kakashi and Rin. In the eyes of many in Konoha, they were the strongest of the new generation. As a devoted student of Mu Yue, Obito was confident, but he was curious what the others thought. "If it's just a practice match, Mu Yue will win," Kakashi said after a moment's thought. As their shared disciple, he knew both of them well. Minato's strength lay overwhelmingly in his superhuman speed. Without Flying Thunder God, he was still powerful, but not the Yellow Flash. Mu Yue, however, was far more well-rounded. He had mastered 7 chakra natures, numerous 5-release techniques, a breathing technique, armament haki, and a string of secret jutsu. Even stripped of one ability, Mu Yue had so many alternatives that Kakashi could not see a clear weakness. Only sheer, absolute power could possibly beat Mu Yue, Kakashi thought. He could only imagine someone like the 3rd Hokage, 3rd Tsuchikage, or 3rd Raikage overpowering him. "What about if it's not a practice match?" Obito persisted. He figured a real fight wouldn't be much different. "If it's real, there might be no result," Kakashi answered. "If Minato wants to vanish, Mu Yue can't stop him. Unless they fight to the death, a master of Flying Thunder God is almost impossible to pin down." Shisui, recalling what he knew about Minato, also picked Mu Yue. Their reputations are similar, but Mu Yue's low profile hides his strength. "If I had to choose, it's Mu Yue." Metkai laughed heartily and gave Mu Yue a thumbs up. "Definitely Mu Yue." Rin's reasoning was simpler. "I think Mu Yue will win. He has armament haki, and Minato's speed alone might not be enough. Mu Yue even has his own version of Flying Thunder God and a lightning-breathing chakra mode. He's more complete." "Everyone's leaning the same way," Obito noted. "But Minato's strong too. Let's not cheer for Mu Yue. Just watch." Kakashi shot him an exasperated look. No one would shout during a practice match. They're friends. It'd be awkward. "What if someone does?" Obito asked, unconvinced, but Kakashi ignored him and focused. "Go all out, Minato. Don't hold back just because you're worried about me," Mu Yue said calmly. "Even if you hadn't asked, I would," Minato replied with a smile. "After all, Mu Yue, you defeated a Jinchuriki." "Besides, Kushina's watching," Mu Yue said with a small grin. Kushina hadn't come to the training ground in person, but by her insistence, and with Hiruzen Sarutobi's interest in the match, she had permission to watch through the crystal ball in the Hokage's office. That space was under a barrier, keeping the Nine Tails chakra from affecting her. She scowled at the screen. "Why can I see them, but not hear them?" she demanded. Hiruzen gestured apologetically. This jutsu only transmits visuals from such a distance. Sound would be asking too much. Kushina reluctantly accepted it and settled in to watch. Hiruzen, too, focused on the pair. If Kushina weren't who she was, he might have booted her out for complaining so much. He sighed and watched the duel begin. The battle begins. Kakashi, acting as referee, called out. Both Mu Yue and Minato formed seals at once. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. They launched simultaneously. Giant streams of flame poured from their mouths, filling the distance between them and scorching the ground. When the two flames met, Mu Yue's sea of fire pushed forward, overrunning Minato's. Even without a special breathing technique, Mu Yue's mastery of fire release was flawless. His chakra nature was superior. Minato's fire was good, but it was swallowed by Mu Yue's power. Kushina frowned. Is Minato's fire release really that weak? He looks like he's getting steamrolled. Hiruzen corrected her gently. Minato's ire isn't weak. Mu Yue's is simply exceptional. Minato's real edge is his flying thunder god. The question is whether Mu Yue can deal with that. As if answering Hiruzen's thought, Minato vanished with a flash and produced a flying thunder god kunai. Mu Yue chased instantly. The two disappeared from their spots, and metal rang when their kunai clashed on reappearance. Minato felt the vibration through his palm and was pushed back. Mu Yue's power, whether from chakra or pure physical strength, surprised him. Mu Yue's taijutsu isn't simple, Minato thought. He prepared his favored tactic. As he retreated, Minato tossed one kunai at Mu Yue and another behind himself. Mu Yue had already entered Transparent World. Minato's superhuman speed could be tracked through it. Mu Yue threw several shuriken that deflected the incoming flying thunder god kunai and then angled toward Minato. With a single seal, Mu Yue spat out a volley of fireballs. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Shuriken in front, fire behind, the attack converged from multiple directions. Minato vanished from where he stood. Before his kunai could reach its mark, both shuriken and fire detonated at the empty spot. Explosions and smoke filled the air. Mu Yue, however, had moved too. His transparent world showed that Minato had reappeared at the kunai he had thrown to the rear. Wind release, vacuum bullet. Mu Yue raced forward with wind blasts converging on Minato's landing zone. Minato responded without hesitation. He threw a kunai at Mu Yue and used Flying Thunder God to teleport to the previously bounced kunai. Mu Yue anticipated this and threw his own Flying Thunder God kunai. Minato, with razor reflexes, tossed his kunai into the air and pushed his technique to the limit to transfer again. Mu Yue used Flying Thunder God as well and arrived where Minato had just been. Minato appeared above him, blue chakra spiraling into a Rasengan and smashed toward Mu Yue's back. Mu Yue spun with lightning speed and countered the Rasengan he held. The two chakra spheres collided with a deafening boom, blinding light and rising dust hiding their forms. Obito's eyes were wide. So cool, when can I learn Flying Thunder God? Kakashi was dazzled too. He knew that without Transparent World, he would have been finished. But when the light faded, only Mu Yue stood, unscathed except for some dust and mud. Minato had returned to the spot targeted earlier by Mu Yue's vacuum bullet. He staggered, his right hand trembling from having used Rasengan, his clothes shredded by the explosion. Mu Yue had emerged dominant in that exchange. Kushina's shoulders dropped in mock solemnity. Looks like Minato's in second. Mu Yue stopped that. She smiled inwardly. Minato was her boyfriend, and Mu Yue her close friend. Whoever won, she was happy, but she admitted curiosity. Who truly was the strongest of Konoha's new generation? If Mu Yue is the strongest, I'll make a big dinner to celebrate, she mused aloud, licking her lips at the thought. Hiruzen gave her a pointed look. How lavish! He couldn't help but be pleased himself. He'd taught Mu Yue some ninjutsu and felt a share of pride. Still, he kept his focus. Nothing was decided yet. Minato, breathing hard, thought likewise. Mu Yue's chakra sphere had been stronger. Mu Yue's development was ahead. Minato didn't stop. He threw several shuriken and unleashed a jutsu. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. His shuriken multiplied, turning into a dense hail that shot toward Mu Yue. Mu Yue countered with his own Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Metal sparks filled the sky as the two barrages collided in an artful flash. Minato hoped the chaos would hide a flying thunder god kunai submerged beneath Mu Yue's Phoenix Sage fire technique. He tossed more kunai to mislead Mu Yue and sprinted toward the hidden kunai. Mu Yue pursued, eyes flicking rapidly, as if cataloging every possible landing point of Minato's teleportation. Perhaps weakened by his earlier blow, Minato closed the distance. He reached the scorched ground from Mu Yue's fur, and kept running. Mu Yue crossed the same ground in pursuit. Then Minato pulled out a flash bomb and a flying thunder god kunai. He detonated the flash and threw the kunai to the side to misdirect. The blinding light turned Mu Yue's world yellow. With the sound of a kunai slicing air, Minato appeared silently behind Mu Yue with another transfer and once again raised a sapphire Rasengan. Obito was puzzled. How did he get behind him? Doesn't Flying Thunder God require a marked item? Kakashi answered. He had been watching with Transparent World active and caught the detail. When Minato had last teleported, he'd secretly left a Flying Thunder God kunai behind. That planted kunai explained Minato's sudden appearance. Hiruzen nodded in approval. Because he'd watched from a broad vantage, he too had noticed the submerged kunai early on. Battles weren't mere comparisons of raw skills. Strategy, timing, and deception played huge roles. Just as everyone marveled at Minato's gambit, the situation flipped again. The instant Minato appeared, Mu Yue jabbed backward with the kunai he held. Before Minato's Rasengan could touch him, Mu Yue's blade pressed against his chest, right over the heart. Chapter 480. Asking for monthly tickets. You've probably noticed the extra updates recently. I've been putting out roughly 8,000 words a day. The timing's a little odd, though. Sometimes the second chapter posts at 3 or 4 in the morning. It's not that Xiaoju didn't want to write before. I was genuinely busy. The more an author updates, the more income they get, and who would turn down that? February was tied up with New Year events. Mid-March, I changed jobs, moved rentals, and had a lot to sort out, so I could only manage the usual 4K updates. Someone commented that I'd bought a house. I wish. If that were true, I definitely wouldn't be staying up until 3 or 4 a.m. to write. It was just a job change. Writing web novels takes a lot out of you, and I took an easier job so I wouldn't have to keep staying up late and then get up early for work. After a long time, that really wrecks your health. About the bride price. I saw suggestions to find someone in Guangdong where bride prices are supposedly low. If I could, I would. I've said before, I'm from Jiangxi. To be more precise, Shangrao, Poyang County, and bride prices are high here, even within Jiangxi. It's maxed out for me, but honestly the bride price can wait. The real reason I've been pushing updates so hard is that my family's self-built house is going to be torn down and rebuilt, and my parents need me to contribute 280,000 yuan. My family's finances are ordinary, but my parents are incredibly supportive of my education and work. When I wanted an expensive study machine, they bought it without hesitation, even if it ended up gathering dust later. The old house has a lot of problems, and I'm most fed up with the bathroom. One tiny bathroom for 2 floors. You have to go downstairs every time. The drainage is bad, so showers leave standing water, and it clogs constantly. For my parents' comfort, and so I have somewhere decent to stay when I go home, we need to fix it. So this month I'm going all out. Barring any accidents, I'll do at least 8K a day. If something unexpected happens, I'll explain, but I'll try to write as much as I can and publish whatever I finish. I'd really appreciate it if you could show some support with monthly tickets. I don't ask for them often, usually only when I'm doing a heavy update push, but this time I want to try hard. I've got a one-time strongest recommendation available for this book, and I'd like to see if, with heavy updates plus that recommendation, I can break into the top 10 in the monthly votes for the category. I've never reached that before, and this might be the best chance. So final point, please consider casting your monthly votes. Thank you for your support.